What's up, everybody? Hope you're having a great week. Well, week or weekend depending on when this goes live, but I started voiceover on a Thursday, so semantics. We got a heck of a great run in store today, and one I've been very excited to do for a long time. Was intended to be my end of the year special, but peak season got in the way. Although what we got for our end of the year special was still pretty awesome. At any rate, first off, a massive shout out to the creators who put a lot of work into this mod. It's 14 years old now, but it's pretty cool and it gives us what we need for this run. Credit is in the description below, as well as a link to the mod if you're interested. Real quick before we get into the rules, you'll notice a couple of broken textures. Oh, first off, I'm a complete amateur when it comes to modding anyway. But those are supposed to be Humvees. They're static and we can't drive them, just to clarify, so I don't mind. It'll work out with the story I've got in mind for this run's protagonist, but I'm going to clear up the Humvee thing real quick. The mod you see on screen is the source that this modder used for the Humvee, but you need this mod itself to actually drive them. Problem is that this mod requires Fallout the Frontier, and, well, I'm not very interested in installing that mod. Not gonna beat that dead horse, just giving context. Anyway, back to the challenge. Since we're talking context, here's a tidbit about the Midwest. The Midwestern BOS, during the events of Fallout Tactics, became a thing because a single Zeppelin was stranded and separated from the main force, headed east in pursuit of the remnants of Richard Gray's Unity, who had also fled east, making as far as Chicago, where Fallout Tactics begins, but that journey started back in 2197, and, well, that was 86 years ago. No longer wielding salvage, they've had plenty of time to refine their tech, push further west, and grow their, well, let's not mince words here. By now, these guys are an empire with how much territory they have. So, the rules. Well, we're playing as a Midwest Paladin, and as such, have access to quite a bit of weaponry, including weapons from this mod. As is standard for a Brotherhood unit, we'll be rocking energy weapons and high-tech goodies like the Super Sledge, as well as power armor. Hardcore mode for sure, but the real kicker is, you saw the thumbnail, we have to clear all 4 DLCs. I doubt that the beginning of the game is going to be hard, as it's not balanced for a power armor-wielding character, but once we level up a fair bit, I think our protagonist is going to have his work cut out for him, especially in Old World Blues and Lonesome Road. On screen now is what our Midwest bro looks like underneath the armor, as well as a special allocation, tagged skills, and for traits we went with Skilled and Logan's Loophole. Despite the benefits of the latter, having a hard level cap at 30, when we're doing this much content, means we're going to have to be very, very careful with how we spend our skill points when we level up. Just might have to partake in some good old-fashioned skill buck hunting too. We're starting at level 5, and I played the game normally up to this point, doing no quests aside from the tutorial with Sunny Smiles. I avoided combat as much as I could. The most combat I engaged in was all those ants at the Avonpa racetrack en route to the NCR Mojave outpost, but we haven't done those quests yet. I haven't engaged with the main plot in any way because, well, this is a Midwest Paladin run after all. Would it make sense for us to start doing story stuff before the run officially begins? Now, before we set the scene, my plans for our protagonist's story progression included going through the DLCs in chronological order. I've never known exactly what that chronological order is canonically, but I've always assumed that it's the DLCs going by their release date, so Dead Money first, then Honest Hearts, then Old World Blues, and finally Lonesome Road. And yeah, Dead Money means we're going to lose our gear. For the purposes of clearing that DLC, I am going to allow use of the Hollow Rifle, as it is an energy weapon given to us by Father Elijah, as well as the Knife Spears, both throwing and standard, maybe the Cosmic Knife too, and there's an in-character reason for this, and why I ended up excluding the Police Pistol, which is a pretty fun weapon, so unfortunate we're not going to be able to use it. Now for my favorite part of all my Fallout Challenge video intros, setting the scene. For context, the Midwest territory spans all the way into Colorado. This is where Vault Zero, nestled deep within the Cheyenne Mountains, is located, and where the warrior and their squad overcame the Calculator. There are 3 endings, and we're gonna go with the one where the warrior and the Calculator became a single entity. And since the game was recently made canon again by Bethesda's lead writer, a great choice in my opinion, there's, well, let's just say there's gonna be a bit of a turf overlap between the Midwest and Caesar's Legion, as the Legion was designed without tactics in mind due to it being quote-unquote semi-canon, whatever that means, at the time. Both have a presence in Colorado. They're not at war yet, but I'm taking a bit of a liberty here and going to say that the two just haven't crossed paths up until the time our protagonist's story begins. Instead, the forces at the garrison we see here in the Mojave made a little pit stop at New Canaan courtesy of their Zeppelin, They originally had designs on perhaps annexing this great settlement, but tales of the Mojave woven by caravanners and travelers caused this battalion to change course, at least temporarily. Nevada would be an excellent location for them to set up shop, and when they do, oh, did our protagonist and his crew hit the jackpot. Their bunker's construction is complete right around the time the events of Fallout New Vegas kick off, with Benny shooting Courier 6 and all that not fun stuff. In this timeline, Doc Mitchell was unable to save C6 as Victor's rescue came just a bit too late. That's the Securitron Victor, not our protag, of course. The name I went with will be familiar to those who tune in to the Elder Scrolls Oblivion Let's Play. Since there are no human characters and tactics who would be alive by this time, and any who are would be far too old to fight, we gotta roll with an OC here. I even came up with a cool moniker for our protagonist, something in line with the likes of the Courier, the Warrior, the Vault Dweller, etc. This is the Innovator. He's been serving in the Midwest for 10 years, from the moment he became 18 years old. The Innovator was born and raised in Kansas City, and while he holds the rank of Paladin, a recent promotion, the Innovator and a small group like him are used for another purpose. He works as a field operative to scout out independent settlements that may be of interest to the Midwest Brotherhood. I figured I needed a justification for how I played the game from the start up to this point, and it's why we started off with wearing lightweight leather armor from the Courier stash. Logan's Loophole also serves an in-character purpose, as our protagonist has cybernetic enhancements reflected by this trait and other perks we'll be getting along the way. I guess you could say he's like this bunker's version of Kellogg, but only as far as the cybernetics go, and nowhere near the amount of enhancements that Kellogg has, and, well, the big difference being that their personalities and morals couldn't be any further apart. Our protag is a good egg, a guy who likes to be fair with people, but also knows when to be tough. He is a Midwest BoS Paladin, after all. The West seems to have largely moved on from the days of old, when the original crew ended up stranded near Brahmanwood. Our Midwest garrison has learned that their former brothers continue to exist, but at the start of the Innovator's tale, they're not aware of the West Coast BOS's current state of affairs. What they do know is the general political climate of the Mojave and face value level knowledge of who the major players are. Seeing the NCR here is no surprise, as the original expedition to pursue the remnants of the Master's army began when the NCR was in its early years. But since they were cut off from the West, they don't know what's been going on in this neck of the woods or what the NCR has become. Oh, last tidbit about our protag and why I'm going to allow him to use the knife spears during the events of Dead Money. It's because he has tribal blood coursing through his veins. No, he's not a descendant of the Warrior, that'd be silly. But we're gonna say that his father is an engineer who works for the Midwest BOS, and his mother is a tribal within the Midwest territory. While this character has no connection to the Warrior, I figure that making our character tribal would be a cool little nod to the Warrior, as the Warrior was a tribal who was conscripted into the Midwest BOS at the start of the game. In order to give us this suit of power armor as well as a couple of weapons, I did use the kill console command on an initiate and a guard. This was also done for story reasons, as the Midwest bunker has been having turf disputes with the fiends, and in the battle that took place before the run began, 2 lives were lost on our side. As for the fiends, well, let's just say they have a lot less influence in northern outer Vegas. And by way less, I mean none at all. That's also how I have a laser rifle at the start of this run. I killed a fiend and I looted it. So the Innovator's mission here, at least at the start, is to investigate the other settlements and offer aid when needed. We'll be testing the waters of each settlement, seeing how they react to our presence. This will also help the Midwest BOS get a feel for how the settlements feel about the other factions, although I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say it didn't take them all that long to figure out what these guys think of the Legion. By these guys, I mean the settlements of the Mojave. What may surprise our Midwest protagonist and his allies is how they feel about the NCR. Making our way south, we enter Kent McCarran on the behest of Alice McClafferty. She needs an invoice delivered, and it's on the way, so let's make a quick buck. But, well, me being me, I forgot to turn in the invoice upon talking to Hildern here because I got excited. Why? Well, our protagonist has a vested interest in this Vault 22 since it just came up in conversation. Yeah, that's right. We're going to be tackling some vaults this run, besides Vault 3 at any rate, since we almost always go there and kill Motor Runner. While we're here, we'll inquire about the looming threat, and we can go to Major Daughtry for that, so we can cash in on one of the 3 bounties as well. And by one of, I mean all 3 of them. Between the jackals, the scorpions, those thugs underneath in the sewers, and the fiends we're going after, this is feeling awfully reminiscent of the start of Fallout tactics, where our enemies were largely raiders. So while we do that, let's talk about how our character in-universe is able to interact with the NCR without being attacked on sight. Now, from a mechanical standpoint, this doesn't count as faction armor since the Midwest BOS might as well not exist to anyone here in the Mojave. But in character, I came up with a reason I thought was pretty fun, and we'll even expand upon it as the Innovator's adventure progresses. As mentioned earlier, our character's father is an engineer who works for the Midwest. He's not here on this expedition, of course, but Midwest Sanction engineers obviously have a lot of technical know-how, and because Vic is a Paladin, he's savvy with power armor. When questioned about his unusual armor by several NCR soldiers at this point, he has not revealed who he works for. Instead, he describes himself as a merc who came all the way from Utah, and that he served as a bodyguard for the Happy Charles Caravan, the same group of dudes in the Northern Passage. He claims that the power servitors have been removed so that he can wield the armor much easier, and this story seems to largely work. Of course, our protagonist does not know about NCR salvaged armor, so he wouldn't know to use that as part of his cover-up story. Our protagonist describes his armor as a combination of salvaged equipment he acquired over the years during his work as a merc, and that he paid an engineer handsomely to remove the servitors since he couldn't properly learn how to use power armor. This is entirely for the purposes of discretion, although eventually they'll probably start seeing that he's frequently making trips to this unusual bunker by the Northern Passage, so we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. As our hero's reputation with the NCR increases, the higher-ups may want to invite him to Hoover Dam so that they can check out the armor and perhaps improve upon their own NCR-based design. I think this is a good enough reason for Vic to be friendly towards the NCR because, I mean, hey, Raiders in Fallout 4 have power armor, so power armor isn't exactly rare. And since this guy is from Utah, allegedly, it's easy to believe that at least someone up there knows how to use power armor, even if it's, you know, without the servitors, so not quite properly use it. This Utah might even be of interest to the Republic, but that's a campaign for another day. And well-meaning though it may be, let's hope this cover-up story doesn't come back to bite the Innovator in the butt. And this battle against Driver Nephi and his fiend goons was one of the craziest things I've ever seen in any Fallout challenge video I've done. I'm not sure what's going on with these fiend NPCs here, but we're shooting them practically point blank, and we're just shooting right through them. I was concerned. I thought maybe that I had messed up big time with the modding, and maybe these guys are, like, invisible or something. But no, it's just this particular group of fiends here. Like, when we go after Violet and Cook, this does not happen, and to show you what I'm talking about, and just let you take in how insane this little, would you call it a glitch or something? A bug? I don't know. But as we get ready to go ahead and fight Driver Nephi and cash in on that bounty, check this out. We're shooting him right, pretty much right in the computer, and it's just going right through him. So we're gonna have to melee this guy because we do know that our Brotherhood Gladius can actually hit these guys. I mean, hey, if nothing else, at the end of the day, it's fun variety and content, am I right? The Driver Nephi hits pretty darn hard, but, well, we have an awesome Brotherhood Gladius, and our T60 power armor, yeah, he ain't gonna be able to match that. And hey, what do you know, 10 of Spades did not botch our kill this time, so we can get the full bounty on Driver Nephi. It's a late Christmas miracle. And just to show you that that was some little glitch, bug, weird thing specific for Nephi and his band of goons, we're going after Violet right now, and gotta say, her with her pack of dogs, a lot easier to fight than Nephi, but at the same time, we don't have the first recon, although if you try hard enough, you can get them to come over here too. I don't know if that would be worth it though, because you'd have Driver Nephi and his entire pack on you while you're trying to lure out Violet, and then you'd have to run all the way back to where they're stationed. I don't know, maybe we'll try that sometime. But yeah, as you can see, we had no trouble hitting Violet that time. If you guys have the answer to what just happened, feel free to let me know in the comments, because I got no idea. But yeah, getting back to the previous point, there was one time during one of these runs where I was able to actually get them to go into Nephi's little lair, so if that's possible, then it should be possible to lure them over to Violet too, right? And you know what? Let's top it off with Cook here. As usual, we take out Queenie, and we're gonna say that he got that little tip from Lieutenant Gorobits as well. I figure we only asked Daughtry about Nephi, and Lieutenant Gorobits and the 1st Recon Squad have it pretty out for Cook, understandably, considering what he did. And our character doesn't know that yet, but when he finds out, it's gonna make killing Cook all the more cathartic. And speaking of cathartic Cook kills, check this out. Something else I've never seen before. I've never seen Cook actually run away from us. And being all excited about 10 of Spades not dome-shotting Nephi, well, we turned Cook into a pile of Nickelodeon gack, so that's going to mangle his head. I mean, obviously, right? But really, our protagonist cares less about the bounty and more about just cleaning the Mojave of Raider scum. We continue to make our way south of the settlement of Prim, and, well, Since this is supposed to be the first dungeon that you go through, and we're wearing power armor and we're still not that high of a level, yeah, this place, very easy. But since our character is scouting out settlements that may be in need of help from the Midwest, boy, Preston would really like these guys, wouldn't he? Well, probably not as much as you think. There is a bit of mischaracterization when it comes to the Midwest chapter. When I hear people talk about the Midwest, I often think to myself, I don't know what these guys know about this game because the Midwest chapter has internment camps throughout their territory. We'll get to that in a sec, though, but yeah, obviously, Prim definitely in need of help. And the innovator clears through it in pretty much record time. I think this is the fastest we've ever gone through this place. So we clear out the convicts known as powder gangers, so that's another group of raiders, they might as well be, for our protagonist to go take out. We're gonna save Beagle, report back to Johnson Nash, and well, apparently they need a new sheriff around here, and here's the first of many opportunities for the Midwest to make its presence known. We program Prim Slim, who is now property of the Midwest, to watch over Prim until the Midwest is ready to take further action. As we go after the powder gangers, assisting the NCR with cleaning out the NCRCF, and we'll be going after Raider scum after the fact. Just want to touch up on that earlier point. The Midwest is often characterized as a more benevolent version of their West Coast counterparts, and this is and is not true. They make use of forced labor camps, aka internment camps, to punish those who defy Brotherhood rule. They also force conscription upon the subjects they lord over if necessary, though joining voluntarily is also pretty common. They are a lot more lenient when it comes to tech, and that's less for them being kind and more for a practical reason. You see, because they were stranded at the start of Fallout Tactics, they had to adapt in order to survive. This is why they recruited locals. This is why they eventually allowed non-humans to join, and this was a pretty big deal. Hardly something that was widely accepted, as change is never universally accepted. It was actually a pretty big plot point in that game, and the entire point of General Simon Barnicki's character, and he was not alone in his sentiments. Consider that they're the governing force in the Midwest, so yeah, they're gonna be a bit more lenient with tech because they're the ones in control of everything already. I've personally always seen the Midwest as a natural, organic evolution of the Brotherhood, just one way the Brotherhood can stay with the times, stay relevant, remain powerful. They're as far away as you can get from the traditions of the West Coast, but not even the Lion's Pride from Fallout 3 has made the changes they've made. I bring them up because they're also largely characterized as benevolent, even though they have a shoot-on-sight policy for non-feral ghouls and super mutants. Scribe Rothschild describes the Midwest as having gone rogue, so it's not likely that the Midwest would get along with them either. As for the current leader of the East Coast, well, you could just see Arthur Maxon reeling with anger at the thought of non-humans joining Brotherhood ranks. The Midwest BoS is well and truly a rogue state within the Brotherhood, but they also happen to be the best of the bunch. So yeah, we've met Veronica, so things are about to get really interesting. Of course, we're helping out Novak, not just with that Nightkin assaulting the rancher's Brahmin. On the topic of non-feral ghouls, we're going to help out the Bright group by taking out the Nightkin in the basement. Now, I could potentially see a Midwest operative going for the peaceful solution here for both sides, but our character thinks that the Nightkin in the basement here are associated with the one that was outside, and it could be for all we know. It's been a hot minute since we've gone after Davison and his group of Nightkin, and this is the ideal character to do that with. And of course, our character doesn't know at this time, because Jason Bright wants to go to the far beyond. But you know, when they come back, they always have a place in the Midwest Brotherhood. Anyone who wants to join can. And I'm going to say in this version of events that instead of going with Jason Bright, Harland actually does make his way up to the Midwest. We'll take him there ourselves. Our brothers and sisters at the garrison can try out Harland, see what he's made of, which he's going to be pretty sturdy if he was able to survive against the Nightkin for all this time, having killed a few of them himself. I imagine that Veronica would be pretty interested in this Midwest chapter. She's probably heard about them. Again, I think the Midwest at this point would be a far gone memory, more like an obscure footnote in Brotherhood history. But with as forward-thinking as Veronica is, meeting a Midwest Paladin and visiting the bunker would, in my opinion, only reinforce her stance that the Brotherhood has to change. Though I gotta say, her watching a Brotherhood operative helping out ghouls is a little unusual in her mind. I don't think she'd have a problem with it, but it would definitely be a different change of pace, we'll say. And hey, wouldn't you know it, as we go back to Novak, Veronica pulls our protagonist aside and starts talking to him about the West Coast Brotherhood and their sad state of affairs. We do agree with her that the West Coast needs to get with the times. Oh, and you saw me take Veronica over to the bunker earlier, yeah. I poke fun at the fact that you can go to the Hidden Valley bunker the second you recruit her, so I thought that our character would do the same for Veronica. The last thing that we do here in Novak is help Craig Boone. We've already helped out Ranger Andy. We've run his little errand over to Ranger Station Charlie for him. And well, the Midwest obviously considers the Legion an enemy, and Boone hates the Legion, as we know, so where do you think they're gonna go first? Well, actually, the first place we went to was the Legion raid camp. I always like to go there first. There's only a few Legionaries there. We can free the Powder Gangers, and we can also complete booted from boxcars in advance. So after we pot-shot the recruit Legionaries, and we're gonna go take out the Bark Scorpion just so they don't aggro and follow us, attack us from behind, all that not cool stuff. We're also going to put the Powder Gangers who've been crucified out of their misery. Now watch this. See, I thought I killed all of them, which is why, you know, it said Caesar's Legion vilified, but nah. Wolpez Colta was over there, but he doesn't last very long. Side by side with our new companion Boone, we're gonna go and do all the stuff leading up to attacking Nelson, and we're gonna do that here too, obviously. We're trying to get the Legion way out of dodge. Now, it's pretty standard, you know, we lure DaiShi and his goons outside, and they all go down pretty fast, but if you thought we were done with the silly bugs, glitches, I don't know what, collision errors or something, watch this with DaiShi right here. Hey, if anybody wanted to see an upskirt of a Legionary, this is the video for you. Can't say I blame you. DaiShi, he's got some nice calves there. Well, had, I should say. Once we report back to Major Paladin, we're gonna go ahead and head on over to Camp Golf because there's something pretty important we gotta take care of because we have also been helping out the NCR with their little communication issue. Our protagonist has seen the NCR's inefficiencies. They mean well, and there are many good soldiers here in the Mojave. But it's the brass, the higher-ups, who have led the NCR into the stagnant, morality-bankrupt quagmire of a campaign. And meeting Hanlon? Well, after hearing what the chief has to say, it is tempting to turn him in. However, because the Midwest will eventually have to engage in some manner of saber-rattling with the NCR, the innovator chooses to keep Hanlon secret. Hanlon is also the first person our protagonist reveals his affiliation to. If Hanlon talks, then Vic will expose his secret. It's tough, but fair. The reason I bring that up is because Hanlon takes a little shot in the dark saying he doesn't know if we're working for Kaiser or not. Oh, we're not working with Kaiser, but we're working with someone who has a vested interest in the Mojave wasteland. The innovator revealed that in a hushed tone too because, you know, Boone was outside. He's not quite ready to reveal that to his new friend. Currently, Vic is still rocking with his Utah cover-up story. No time to dwell on that though, as Cottonwood Cove is long overdue for a cleansing, and this time, we're not gonna just dump the barrels of radioactive waste. We're going after the Legion the old-fashioned way, and I'm sure Boone would appreciate that. I figure it's high time for a change of pace, since we normally just use the Locksmith Reader's Guide coupled with Comprehension, which we did take at level 6, to take care of them. But doing that, we lose the Weathers family, and our protagonist is not about to kill innocent people, even if unleashing the barrels is a far easier solution to this problem. Well, we kicked some Legion ass. Let's talk about how this run came about. I always had designs on a Midwest run because the Midwest BoS is my favorite faction in the entire franchise, but a fan also put in this as a request. I did mention at the start that I wanted this to be my original end-of-the-year special, but, you know, work, peak season, pretty good stuff, but not great for a project of this caliber. And he suggested running 3 of the 4 DLCs. Since I always intended this as an all DLCs run, I'd say bro got his request and then some. It's pretty great when the content creator and a fan have a similar mindset, and this is why I brought up the Humvee issue at the start. I was never going to ban fast travel though, if for no other reason you can't take the Humvees with you to the DLC areas. And banning fast travel doesn't quite have the drawback that it does in Fallout 4's survival mode. Now compare that to Fallout New Vegas and hardcore mode. We have to contend with hunger, thirst, sleep deprivation, ammo having, wait, that's a shocking concept, I know. And stim packs not healing limbs and or heal over time instead, which honestly I prefer it quite a bit. So you need either Hydra or Doctor's bags, which are never in short supply in the Mojave. Sleeping doesn't restore your health fully either, nor restore your limb damage. It definitely did set the stage for Bethesda's design of survival mode in Fallout 4, something I'm extremely eager to use in a Fallout 4 challenge run at some point. I might actually do my Recruit Legionary Fallout 4 Let's Play in survival mode. I mean, that's a ways off, but yeah. That's a little thought in the noggin there. But hey, shout out to you, man. It's pretty cool to see the Midwest getting some lovin'. Funny enough, the Midwest actually seems to have been gaining a bit of traction lately, and I absolutely love that. Funny enough, the BoS chapter in that non-canon PS2 game is also referred to as the Midwest, but they're not the same group? I can't tell if it's supposed to be Carbon, California, or some location in Texas. It's always been kind of weird to me, but it's also non-canon? Whatever, I'm deviating here. Let's get back to the challenge, shall we? Well, after half of Caesar's forces just ran from us, we can go turn this quest into Frank Weathers here. And I figure in this timeline, in addition to him wanting to sober up, we can potentially bring him on board as a recruit if he really wants to do right by his family and protect them. We'll see if he's got what it takes. And yeah, I think our protagonist and Boone are on the same page as far as how they feel about the Legion and them being able to operate with impunity, so we're gonna head on over to good old Bitter Springs. It's a good thing that Boone wanted to stop by here, because with our intervention, we can stop this large Legion raiding party from wreaking havoc upon these innocent, defenseless people. You know, there are a couple of soldiers here, but, I mean, let's be honest, they're scared, defenseless refugees, and they need protection. There is a bit of a twist coming up, though. Our protagonist is going to confide something in Boone once they save the refugees and help put the latter's mind at ease somehow. I imagine by this point that Vic and Boone are pretty good friends, though the former's secret as a Midwest operative is still under wraps. By this point, he's learned of the hostility between the NCR and his West Coast counterparts, something that frustrates him to no end. Turns out that us losing contact and being cut off from the West was the best thing for us, our protag thinks to himself as he cuts down legionary after legionary. Gotta say too, real quick, a lot of enemies are just straight up fleeing from us. That seems to be happening a lot this run, and I don't know why exactly, but it's definitely cool. I figured that the way they've been building their bond is that, as we've been earning history points with Boone, our protagonist has been revealing more about his life as well. And it's here where he reveals his secret, but Boone is understandably a touch upset by this. He is going to leave our protagonist's party because, I mean, as far as he's concerned, he's Brotherhood. He doesn't know the difference between the two factions yet. The Innovator does not begrudge him this. After passing that 80 science check to get inside of the strip, turns out that the Innovator actually has been a person of interest for Robert House. So much so that he's been invited into the Lucky 38. This alleged mercenary from Utah, well, turns out his name's been going around quite far and wide. House does need somebody to replace Courier 6, who is going to be his replacement for Benny, and I mean, and what better opportunity than to recruit a quote-unquote mercenary of this caliber, am I right? At the same time, our protagonist gets to learn a bit more about the inner politics of the strip, as well as Mr. House himself, not really having a chance to learn about him much up until this point. So Mr. House wants Vic to go after Benny, and well, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that this fight is going to be comedically short. Really, what must be going through his head when he sees a guy decked out in power armor just kick open the door and whip out a Gladius? I imagine Benny's just like, you know what? The game was, in fact, rigged from the start. Overall, though, I can see our protagonist having a bit of respect for Mr. House. He learns from Swank that the chairman wore tribals at one point. So besides Benny, he feels a sort of kinship towards them. All said and done there, and with the Mark of Caesar, we're going to pivot on over to Black Mountain, and let me show you a fun little trick. It's a super easy way to get Raoul. As long as you have a science check of 60 or higher, you can pull this off without a problem, and you don't need Logan's loophole for this either, although Day Tripper is recommended. Through use of a stealth blade, we can sneak all the way on up to where Rhonda is. Rhonda is a Mr. Gutsy that broke down some years ago, causing poor Tabitha, a Nightkin, to go, well, a little stir-crazy here in Black Mountain. And it turns out that once Rhonda was repaired, our protagonist's original intention was to use this Mr. Gutsy to fight the Nightkin, but turns out that doesn't have to happen. The Innovator decrees that any super mutants or Nightkin who are interested in some honest work up at the Midwest bunker can go up there and apply themselves. I imagine he has a vested interest in trying to find a cure for their schizophrenia too. Yeah, we've been to Jacobstown. And hey, we've got Raoul. We're gonna head on back to the good old Lucky 38. What's next? Remembering the abandoned bunker with the BoS insignia, we backtrack there, and it's safe to say there's been recent activity. Well, that's true, because I opened the door to bypass the question we already know the answer to. Of course we want to hit up the Sierra Madre. I actually love this place. It's an awesome player housing location. While it might not be as practical in a hardcore mode, where we have to contend with hunger and thirst, aesthetically, it is my favorite player housing location in the whole game. As we get ready to enter the Force to 4 DLCs we'll be doing, let's touch upon a couple of things I kinda glossed over before. Our protag being fine with Boone's decision to leave? Well, yeah, since the whole point was to help Boone find some sort of clarity in regards to his past. As mentioned before, as we get more history points with Boone, he's also been learning more about our character. I think that Boone would figure out that the Utah Merc backstory, we call it, There are a couple of holes in this because this guy is pretty good. He's certainly militarily trained. This mercenary also has quite the interest in helping out settlements that go well beyond just being paid. As a result, I think Boone would want some answers after Bitter Springs, and the Innovator was still the one to help him, and they have a common enemy in the Legion, but the reason why he leaves the party is that, being former NCR, he doesn't like the Brotherhood, as evidenced when we take him to the Hidden Valley bunker, and some of the NPCs can remark at why he's glowering at them. It's like Veronica said, the Brotherhood has many enemies, and the Midwest chapter pretty much doesn't exist to anyone out west. We've learned more about Veronica too, and I'd say our hero gets along with her the most, and that he especially respects her, knowing where her chapter is lacking. I can't say he feels the same about the rest of the West Coast Brotherhood, though. Although they went rogue long ago, they are still considered ex-Brotherhood, thus outsiders. I figure the only reason he isn't shot on sight is because of McNamara. He wants to make use of this mercenary, not too dissimilar from how the Elder wants to make use of Courier 6 in the main timeline. Hidden Valley knows of the existence of the Midwest presence, and I figure that during Vic's time in the Sierra Madre, they'll discern the location. They're not exactly hard to find anyway. In fact, the other factions, namely the NCR and the Legion, will also pick up on this. Our boys might not be hard to find, but they are armed to the teeth, and thanks to our main character, the major factions are going to have an interesting take on the Midwest. That also includes House, naturally, as we've met him. Before we return to the challenge, we haven't interacted with the other companions yet. We have done Alice's quest to find Cass, but haven't gotten her as a party member yet. I figured to space things out for the sake of the story, plus I want to focus heavily on Veronica for this run. Considering what usually happens there in these runs, she's very overdue for some love. She's actually tied with Raoul as my favorite companion, so that has me even more excited. And hey, speaking of Veronica, it's Dead Money time. How does that pertain to Veronica? Well, because Dead Money's plot entirely revolves around a Brotherhood character, more specifically a former one. Not only that, but we're going to meet someone else from Veronica's past here. Before we dive into that, let's talk about Dead Money and what its general premise is. So, that wonderful older man is a dude named Father Elijah, a name that we as the player and we as the Innovator know through interacting more and more with our favorite awkward BOS pal. He wants what's in the Sierra Madre for himself, and, well, rather than doing the normal thing of paying a team of mercenaries handsomely for an honest contract, that old geezer thinks that the better solution is to strap bomb collars onto the necks of captives, like he's trying to start a new hip trend on TikTok. Oh lord, that is the kind of thing you'd see on that platform, isn't it? So, Elijah. He's Elder McNamara's predecessor and Veronica's former mentor, a man described as brilliant but off. He was the leader of the Hidden Valley bunker up until the conclusion of the Battle of Helios 1, where the NCR's brilliant strategy was to just throw bodies at the Brotherhood until the latter was overwhelmed. Considering that the average soldier for the NCR is a conscript with roughly 2 weeks of training, you can imagine how well that went. I'd love to see Elijah's reaction to Lieutenant Haggerty just letting Fantastic loose on the solar panel dials. Yeah, it's brilliance like that which makes me feel justified in the Innovator's Utah Merc backstory. If the NCR can't decipher wordplay as elementary as a theoretical degree in physics, then a guy with unusual power armor being a mercenary? Sure, why not? At least Utah is unfamiliar territory to them. Gotta be at least one person up that way who has power armor, right? Anyway, Father Elijah needs us to track down 3 other captives who are vital to his plans. See, he wants to break into the Sierra Madre, and he wants more than its riches. Though he's not Brotherhood in name anymore, he is Brotherhood by blood. He treats outsiders with the same scorn, and I'd say he looks down upon non-humans like our Nightkin and Ghoul companion, whom we'll discuss in a moment. But Elijah just kind of hates everybody equally. You see, the message of Dead Money is how difficult it is to let go. Let go of the past, let go of what prevents you from moving on. And considering the wealth within the Sierra Madre, it would be hard for most people to let go. With how much wealth can be accumulated from that heist, I would personally liken it to the Fallout universe equivalent of winning the lottery. Father Elijah cannot let go. Helios 1 broke him as a person, and it's that bitterness, that anger, that would go on to transform him into a murderous monster, one who cannot be reasoned with. What I really like about the initial dialogue options is that if you refuse, Elijah will warn you, twice I think, and if you still refuse, he just sets off your collar. You aren't shoehorned into helping them like you are with Kaisar if you repeatedly smart him off upon your first meeting, though that does result in the game over, of course. Still, I thought it was clever, so you do still kind of have to help him, but refusal has consequences, a game over. And you've noticed by now that we have no gear other than what was provided for us. We have a Dead Money jumpsuit, which, I mean, it's not going to protect us very well, and the Holo Rifle, an awesome energy weapon, which we will be allowed to use after completing the DLC. Just a reminder that in combat, I can only use the Holo Rifle, Cosmic Knife, and the Knife Spear, although the Spear and Knife I will either store away or sell once we're done with the DLC. Oh, and fun fact, this is the first time I've ever played Dead Money on hardcore mode and without using VATS. It's the only piece of New Vegas content I've never done on hardcore mode. A couple of that with me having not played this DLC in almost 3 years. Well, let's just say if you thought this challenge was too easy, we're gonna have a death toll to make up for that in spades here. The first companion we're tracking down is a Nightkin named, Dog? God? Actually, it's both, because the Nightkin are known for their schizophrenia, and this one is no exception. Remember Davison back at RepCon? Yeah, same thing here. Dog is the one who abducted us at the behest of Father Elijah. Dog is a being with great physical strength and with, shall we say, limited mental faculties. He likes eating and serving his master and not much else. Also, I think that master reference is a nod to Fallout 1, due to it being capitalized. God is equally strong, but cunning, ruthless, and quite the sassy blue guy. We have to convince him to open the cage, but we can also try to convince Dog by using our Pit-Boy to trigger the dog personality to emerge, and that one is far easier to command. But we're not interested in commanding others like Father Elijah. Our protagonist wants this Nightkin on his side, and this process is far lengthier, and the one who you choose to open the cage does have consequences. Not only that, but Dog and God both have their own unique perks. God gives you a passive bonus to sneak, and if you don't have Light Step, you do when he's in your party. Dog, on the other hand, is an expert at killing the ghost people due to reasons of eating them. The first time you see him eat one, you unlock a dialogue option, and Dog will teach you this trick. Mechanically, it makes killing the ghost people a lot easier. Every time I play through Dead Money casually, I usually let Dog out of the cage, but I'm gonna go with God this time. So, not only is Dead Money new content for the channel, but this is also a new experience for me personally. You know, on top of playing on hardcore mode for the first time, and without VATS and Dead Money for the first time, gotta say I'm having a lot of fun with this part of the challenge so far. And as you can see, God is pretty hard to try and reason with, but he's not beyond reason, unlike our captor. We're able to convince him to come out of the cage and lock himself out, courtesy of our lockpick check. That's another thing I love about Dead Money. There are so many skill checks in this DLC. And as he opens the door, we get the In My Footsteps perk, which I just described to you. We get a bonus to stealth. I think they meant sneak there. And we have Light Step. That's an extremely useful perk for us because the ghost people have littered the entire villa with a ton of traps. Let's get our next companion. As we dispose of this second ghost person, we're gonna make our way to that ghoul I mentioned earlier. His name is Dean Domino, and he's quite the character. Dean is an integral character not just to our experience, but he's a big part of the history of the Sierra Madre. We'll learn more about him later on, but upon meeting him, it's clear that he wants to be the one in charge, and this is where skill checks become real interesting. We can pass the explosives check and the speech check to see through his trap, as well as give him a bit of courtesy, the latter of which ends up going a long way. The barter check we can't pass as it's too low, but if you do pass that, something very interesting happens later on in the story. But since we can't and our character just wants to see Elijah face justice, we're fine with playing along with Dean. He seems to be pretty smart and resourceful too, as evidenced by the briefcases with his white handprint over them. There's a bunch of them here in the villa, each of them containing supplies and the like. At any rate, with the addition of Dean Domino, we've only got one more companion to acquire. Oh, and Dean's perk, Living Unclean, is super useful for navigating throughout the villa because we take a lot less damage from the toxic cloud. We'll talk about that here in a sec though. As we travel, we have 3 major obstacles to contend with, one of which is the radio signal. That bomb collar is more than just a threat looming over us, a tool to allow Elijah to control his prisoners. The radio broadcasts, though mostly static though they may be, emit frequencies throughout the Madre and the villa. The frequency doesn't gel well with our bomb collar signal, and as such, we have a limited time before the radio frequency sets off the bomb and kills us. And if we die, our companions die because our collars are linked, which also means if they die, we die. Thankfully, most of the radios can be destroyed, but the ones that are lit red are shielded, and we have to find some other way to deactivate them. Usually there's a switch we can hit or a terminal we can access to shut down the broadcasts or alarms. Some are free to access, others we have to pass a science check to unlock. We'll talk more about the other threats, but right now, let's meet our final companion, Christine. She's a Brotherhood-sanctioned assassin tasked with finding Elijah and terminating him. He's managed to thwart her more than once and, just like us, ended up as a captive who is forced to work against her will to help Elijah with securing the Sierra Madre. She's unable to speak, and there is a reason why she was found on this particular auto dock. You may think that Elijah is the one who put her there, but he isn't. Christine does come with an amazing perk, the one I think is the most useful for traveling the villa. She's jury-rigged her own bomb collar to throw off the radio frequency signals a little bit, which will delay the frequency affecting our bomb collar while she's in our party. I think all the companion perks are absolutely amazing, but Christine's is my personal favorite. We're able to pass a couple of skill checks with her, most notably the 60 science check. Upon rescuing her, we hit level 19. Very nice. With our team assembled, Elijah needs us in specific places in order to trigger the Gala event, an event that was supposed to mark the grand opening of the Sierra Madre, but never happened, because the bombs fell. First up is our Nightkin friend, and he's certainly hesitant in his role, which is to flip some switches inside of this literal cage. We need to talk to Dog to start this, and it's the Innovator's introduction to him. He understandably thinks we've been unfair to him, not our intention, but you can certainly see where he's coming from. Now, we could just force them into the cage by lying or threatening them, but again, we want to earn the trust of our companion. What we need to do is track down some ghost people, kill them like we have been, and bring their remains so that Dog can feast upon them. This will satiate God's hunger so that when we bring back out God as the dominant personality, he can flip the switches, play his part, and then we can head on over to Dean Domino. This isn't too bad. It doesn't take a whole lot of time to set up, as this dialogue causes two specific ghost people to appear. Now, you may have noticed throughout our adventure that the ghost people are a little harder to put down than your average enemy. If you simply deplete their HP, they'll get back up. What you gotta do is destroy one of their limbs to keep them down for the count. It sort of reminds me of the Resident Evil 1 remake, where you have to either incinerate a zombie or blow its head off, lest it comes back as a V-Act. That's the Umbrella super scientific term from Crimson Head. This makes Dog a pretty great companion to adventure with and learn the perk from. We didn't do that in this challenge video, but we've got more challenge videos with dead money in mind, so maybe in a future one we'll explore that option. And coming up is another one of Dean's secret stash briefcases. That's 3 out of 15 we can get. Oh, and there's also a bobblehead you can find here. This is important because once you complete this DLC, you can never return to the Sierra Madre, which is kind of lame in my opinion. I understand not being able to go into the vault, but I always felt like we should at least be able to come back to the villa, hang out, kill some ghost people if we want to. I mean, we know the way. We weren't conscious when Dog abducted us on Father Elijah's behalf, but that would still be in our Pit-Boy, right? And now we were talking about threats here in Dead Money. Another one is the Toxic Cloud. Yeah, that red mist we've been going through. Yeah, you don't want to be huffing that. Being that it's corrosive, simply entering it will deplete your health at a rate dependent upon your endurance. In hardcore mode, though, it's even worse. Simply being outside in the villa will drain your health, although much more gradually than being inside of the cloud. And now that we've got our hands on some delicious Ghost Harvester remains, wonder what those taste like, we can return to our Nightkin buddy, give it to God, clean the ventilation as he chew toys it, and then we'll head on over to Dean Domino, get him where he's gotta go. This one is much easier in my opinion. For Dean, we have to activate 2 holograms. Well, we don't have to, but we're going to, and funny enough, I actually activated one of them on the way here, and thanks to our science check, we're able to convince Dean to stand by idly while we activate the holograms in lieu of the upcoming grand opening. As we progress through the villa, you may have noticed that we're picking up items called Sierra Madre chips. Those are our currency throughout our time in Dead Money. We use them on pre-war vending machines to purchase supplies, and at the start, that's limited too. We'll have to find the code for new items, similar to finding blueprints for a crafted weapon in Fallout 3, or the powder charge in the NCRCF. The Holo Rifle has weapon mods we can purchase with Sierra Madre chips as well. We obtain them by grabbing the codes, so we're going to have to make sure we keep a lookout for those. Oh, and a cool tidbit about Dean is that other than Boone, he's the only companion whose outfit we can remove. If we were to give him our Dead Money jumpsuit, we'd be able to snag his unique tuxedo. We're not going to this run, but it's good to know because I want to do an FNV Dean Domino run at some point. It won't include Dead Money, but instead it's going to pick up where his good ending leaves off. But that's a run we'll have to save for later, as we've got a few to come first, including Fallout New Vegas as an Omerta thug, and Fallout 3 as a Talon bro. Anyways, the journey to the other hologram is pretty uneventful, as we've already killed a lot of the ghost people. Yeah, they do respawn, and more will spawn as we get more companions into place. But at this point, the toxic cloud is what's really messing us up a lot more than the ghost people. Because we have a somewhat melee build, it does include super slam, so yeah, I guess we do. The ghost people aren't too bad to contend with. Alrighty, we've got Dean on standby, ready to strike up the band at a moment's notice. We'll talk more about Domino's important role, one could say, feels like an understatement, in the story of Dead Money. But for now, we've got a Gala event to set up. Last but certainly not least, we need to get Christine into position for her role in the Gala event. Because she's tech-savvy, Elijah has assigned her to work a terminal, and there's a bit more to that, but we'll get to that. As for Christine herself, in addition to what we've already discussed, we can go into detail about her perk. Signal interference delays the radio frequency effect on our bomb collar, and is just an awesome perk to have. I cannot stress how great our 3 companions are, because all of them bring something unique and extremely useful to the table during our stay here in Dead Money. And as you probably guessed, the route where we need to take Christine to is rather heavy with radio frequency waves. We'll have to fetch 3 items to repair a switch because, sadly, I lack the repair skill needed. With the Fixin' Things magazine, I could repair it, but I don't have one. You'll see that switch here in just a sec. It's a repair of 60 that we need. The little electrical gizmos that we need to repair that are outside, located throughout various toolboxes throughout the villa. So it's just a matter of backtracking, going through, making sure we avoid the toxic cloud, and dying a couple of times because I can't navigate this place to save my life. Again, it's been about 3 years since I played Dead Money. I have to say, one of the things I really like about this DLC, again, it is my favorite of the 4, is that you really have to take your time here. The difficulty of Dead Money, to me personally, feels not quite on par with the old school games, but it's pretty darn close. And yeah, speaking of those little trinkets, all we gotta do is go outside and we can get our first one. It's right by the entrance to the station here. All we gotta do is exit, bank a right, there's the toolbox, there's 2 more to get. And aside from huffing a little bit too much of that sweet red juice, nothing eventful happens, so we're gonna segue right on over to where we have Ghost Vision. A ghost sight is another item that you can buy from the vending machine. It seems to function identically to the cat's eye you can buy outside. It's just that you see in green instead of blue. Not sure what the difference is. If there is one, feel free to let me know because I've never been able to figure it out. And because I don't want to cut straight to where we talk to Christine next, just to show you guys that there's not a whole lot that's exciting going on here. We gotta battle, I think, a couple of turrets, which we have Christine with us, so even easier. But it's important that we pick up the NS locker key, because we're gonna need that for something real important here in a sec. That's on the desk right here, and after that, Christine pulls us aside, and turns out that she doesn't want to go up that elevator. I don't know if she was claustrophobic before that auto dock, but considering what she's been through, I don't blame her at all. Now, we could just be a straight-up jerk and force her to go in there, or lie to her and trick her to go in there. But again, we're not going to do that. It only takes a couple of minutes to backtrack and get what we need. We need to get a password for that terminal. Once we get that, we're going to head on back, open up that terminal, transfer control of power to this particular station. We can talk to Christine and tell her that she's good to go. She doesn't have to use the elevator. I imagine that of the 3, that our protagonist likes Christine the most. I mean, they are both Brotherhood despite being in different chapters. Christine's fate and current predicament to the Innovator is just proof that the West Coast Brotherhood is, well, let's just say it leaves a lot to be desired in his eyes. Making our way up the tower here, we have not 1, but 2 vending machine codes. One's a weapon mod for our holo rifle, and the other will allow us to buy stim packs from the vending machines, an absolute lifesaver. If you're going fast, this is very easy to miss. Elijah gets into contact with us, and then we contact Christine using our cool little sign language code we came up with. And then God, keeping dog within the cage, is ready to throw the switches, and Dean, as we said before, ready to strike up that band, baby. All we have to do is hit the switch, and the Gala event has begun. That's not quite the grand opening I had in mind for going to a casino, but hey, at least it's unique, and remember earlier how I was talking about how ghost people spawn at certain intervals, like when we get our companions into place? Well, there's a lot more that just showed up, and we're not going to bother with these guys, run right by them. We want to save our resources for the interior, for the Sierra Madre itself. Now, just because we're running from the ghost people doesn't mean that this is easy sailing. Oh no, we actually take a fair bit of damage en route to the entrance to the Sierra Madre. And one more thing is that once you enter the Sierra Madre, you cannot leave until you complete it. Now, don't fret too much if you go inside, because once you complete the casino, you can come back out to the villa, but you can never enter the casino again. So, what I just said about taking your time and trying to find everything you can, yeah, that is amped up to 11 inside the Sierra Madre. And as if running from the ghost people in fear of our very lives because we don't want to get shoot-toyed wasn't enough, as we enter the casino, Well, we have quite the greeting as we find our companions unconscious, and we are too. When we wake up, we don't see Dog, Dean Domino, or Christine anywhere in sight. Elijah does make some snarky offhand remark about how he likes the quietness of the casino because, like, everyone's dead. Well, I half agree with that. I very much like that the Sierra Madre is quiet. It adds so much to the already creepy atmosphere. And being that this is a casino, believe it or not, you can gamble. Well, it's good that Father Elijah is very lenient with allowing us to do this. I mean, if I were Elijah, I would want to keep somebody alive, if for no other reason because I'd want somebody to mop the floor and maybe force to lose to me in gambling with. But, well, I like to think I'm a little smarter than Father Elijah, maybe a bit more, homely, if you will. Anyway, once we grab an emergency key, we're able to get into the back entrance of the kitchen here. The dog has regained control of the Nightkin body. And even worse, he wants to end his own life, which will kill everybody else linked to him via the bomb collars. But he wants to go the extra mile by making the kitchen explode because of the leaking gas, which will also kill Elijah. I don't know how, maybe he's closer than we think. And as you just saw, you gotta be careful because if he spots you, he instantly does it, and you are pretty much dead unless you're able to hit that repair valve straight away. Again, it's important that we take our time and go nice and slow. Oh man, pre-war steak, I bet that's got a stench that could slice through an engine block. And now it's time for our confrontation with Dog, and considering that we barely interacted with him and kept him in the cage, he considers that a hostile action, so we're gonna have to fight him. But because we have a decent melee score, decent strength, and Super Slam, he's pretty easy. And when you're reading through his dialogue here, you really feel for the poor guy. And in this version of events, our character does succeed in trying to get through to him with that 35 speech check, but we're actually trying to convince him not to go through with what he's doing. We do want to help this guy. But despite our best efforts, the battle ends prematurely as he takes his own life. Now that we've looted the maintenance pass, we can escape the kitchen, which we have to do before our bomb collar goes off. Next up, we have to rendezvous with Dean Domino, and how's he going to interact with us? Well, certainly the Tampico Theater will bring back many a memory for this guy. Well, because we cooperated with Dean Domino and made him think he was the one running the show, namely because we didn't have a 50 barter check, Dean is not only quite happy to see us, but he's eager to tell us about the dangers that await us as we try to make our way to him. In addition to the radio frequency waves, some of the toxic cloud permeating from the corners, we're gonna have to contend with the holograms. Haven't seen them too much here in Dead Money. We've been pretty good at avoiding them up to this point. We'll talk about those here in a sec, but in order for us to get to Dean Domino, we only gotta get a couple of keys, and there is a safe with a hard lock, which we don't have the skill to pass. We would if we had locksmithers, but we don't have one. Anyway, holograms are the ultimate pinnacle of technology here in the Sierra Madre. They're invulnerable, they fire laser beams at a rapid pace with their heads on their hands like they think they're Ten Shinhan from Dragon Ball Z trying to fire a Kiko. Might as well be, because you can get fried really fast if you get hit by more than like a couple of them. And in order to distract them so we can fully make our way to Dean and escape with him, we need an audio holotape which will project a live hologram of Dean, which thankfully is not going to attack us. He's just singing for the holograms. And don't forget to grab that line congressional style skill book. Upon rendezvousing with Dean, our protagonist is about to learn firsthand the role that his partner has here in the Sierra Madre. He won't learn everything, but suffice to say that Dean was up to some real shady stuff, including the manipulation of a singer named Hereticus. That's important for what's to come. As well as the owner of the Sierra Madre, a guy named Frederick Sinclair. As we talk to him, it's evident that Dean was extremely jealous of this guy, despite Dean himself enjoying the luxury of a high-profile life. He basically screwed over Sinclair because he wanted to. And how exactly did he do that? Well, in addition to manipulating Vera into manipulating Sinclair, say that 3 times fast, you ever notice the shabby quality of the buildings in the villa while we were traveling through there? Yep, that was all orchestrated by Dean as well. You can learn a lot about that in the many terminals located throughout this DLC, but Dean goes by the moniker Mr. Yesterday in most of those terminals. Not only was he pocketing a chunk of the money meant to go into the project, but he also allowed for the construction crew to drink and partake in chems despite agreeing not to when signing up for the job. Oh, and those ghost people? Those are the construction workers, if I'm understanding correctly. He's also the one responsible for Christine being in the condition she's in. Remember before when I said Elijah wasn't the one that put her in the auto dock? Yeah, that was Dean. He wanted to alter Christine's vocal cords to match the voice of Vera. We'll cover that more when we meet up with Christine again. Which is right now, and it's here where we find out all about Christine's vendetta against Father Elijah. And funny enough, the Sierra Madre's advanced security sending Christine here because she sounds like Vera kinda worked out in everybody's favor. Anyway, before Christine can put her singing talents to use, we gotta backtrack to the lobby and go get some music files. And now, periodically, as we've been rescuing our companions, ghost people have been breaking into the casino. Sound familiar? Well, we chopped them up with our knife spear. Little thoughts on earlier. Needless to say, our hero is not a fan of Dean, but nothing good would have come from killing him back there. Now, there's a nice little internment camp with his name on it, and I think it would be pretty easy to trick Dean into checking out the bunker. We'll put in a good name for him, our character thinks to himself. I gotta say, Dean's a bastard, and I can't help but love him for it. I don't like him as a person, but he's such a well-written character, and my personal favorite part of Dead Money. You gotta love a great bad guy. As for Christine, yeah, we're pretty cool with her. Vic will, after the events of this DLC, offer her a place in the Midwest BoS, but she will decline respectfully. Yes, it would be cool for her to join, but I just don't see her doing it. We'll go ahead and backtrack to Christine as well. So the plan is, now that we have these audio files, is that we can get Christine to sing the song that Hereticus is supposed to sing to unlock the elevator to the vault which Father Elijah is seeking. I think in addition to everything that we're talking about now, that our character, this is where he would offer her a place in the Midwest, but again, she would decline respectfully. Now, the message of Dead Money is about how hard it is to let go, and every character here represents that message. Dean Domino still resents Sinclair and wants to rob the vault for himself. Dog and God are two sides of a conflicted soul, constantly vying for control, thus they can't let go. Christine cannot let go of Father Elijah for all the things he's done, which I think is rather justifiable, honestly. And of course, the villain himself, Father Elijah, cannot let go of the past of what happened at Helios 1. However, he wants more than just the wealth. Actually, the wealth is just kind of a face value desire. He wants the technology of the Sierra Madre, namely the holograms and the toxic cloud. Elijah can never forgive the NCR for Helios 1, although he's kind of responsible for that battle happening because they could have left there before the NCR got there, but I digress. And Christine has suffered quite a bit because of Father Elijah's madness. After some last-minute preparations, it's time to hit up the Sierra Madre vault. Not a whole lot of combat here either, but instead, the danger comes in the form of the toxic cloud, the abundance of radio frequency waves, and of course, everyone's favorite, the holograms. Oh, real quick, I forgot to mention the assassin's suit when talking about Dead Money gear we can use at the start. Yeah, I legitimately forgot about this great piece of armor. Not only have I not played this DLC in a long time, but I didn't look up anything for it either. I wanted to go in with my first ever Dead Money hardcore mode and Novak's experience to be as fresh as possible. Now, I showed the death in the kitchen, where Dog bloody messed us by proxy, but believe me when I tell you that I died a lot in the villa. Never to the ghost people, but often to the toxic cloud. And even with all that in mind, I have never once been able to clear this final stretch of the DLC without dying, and spoilers? Yeah, I do die. A lot. Don't worry, you'll see a couple of those deaths too. Oh, and quick saving often is really, really good to do here. A very smart idea, because if you don't, you're gonna have to backtrack all the way back from the beginning where your autosave kicks off. And of course, wouldn't you know it, most of the speakers in here are the ones with the red lights, meaning that they are shielded somehow from bullets. Maybe those speakers are holograms too? This part here is super difficult, and despite our best efforts to the contrary, right before we get into that door, we go kaboom. Hey, you know what? We may have died there, but at least we did not get bloody mess kaboomed like we did back in the kitchen. And we died again. And it took me about 10 tries to get past that part. What's that? You thought that was the last of the radio speakers? Oh boy, that is, that's a no-go, because not only do we have more radios to contend with, we also have the holograms to contend with. Now, we can access terminals and change up their patrol patterns, but at the end of the day, I'm thinking the best course of action here is to just beeline it. And speaking of terminals, we have to activate our particular one to shut down an energy field in order for us to access the vault. This is the final stretch before our confrontation with Father Elijah. Just a reminder that the holograms are invulnerable and deal a lot of damage. Now, some holograms have these little emitters you can find throughout the Madre. If you have a high enough repair skill, it should be science in my opinion, but high enough repair skill, you can shut them down, and ours wasn't high enough to shut down any of them. And after thinking about it, I'm like, you know what, there's a terminal right here. Let's go ahead and change the behavior pattern of one of the holograms. Maybe that'll help us out. As we make our way there, we die again. And on this attempt here, we're able to make it to the terminal, shut down the alarms, and then shut down the security force field. And you saw that damage, right? Yeah, that was from one shot from a hologram's laser. We do take a couple of more hits, but we're able to get by the holograms without much of a problem. Make our way to this terminal. We go to exhaust all the options here in order to shut things down. We'll go ahead and grab that extracted holotape, and down there is the skeleton of Frederick Sinclair. We lay our eyes upon the vault that so many have died trying to get to, that so many have lost their lives due to Father Elijah's madness and greed. That does trigger security, but we do have an unusually awesome skill check we can pass here. We can smash the generator there with a 50 or 60. It's on the screen, I forgot. Melee weapon skill to smash the generator, an option that should exist way more often in my opinion. It just goes to show that if you hit things really, really hard, things work out for the best. Not only is there a ton of armor, weapons, and ammo in here, but those gold bars, yeah, those are worth quite a bit. And yes, I know, you can exploit it to where you can take all of them with you, but we're not gonna do that. I don't know how to do it anyway. Yes, I could look up a guide on how to do it, but I don't want to, and I'm not gonna bother to learn it. And besides, for the purposes of our story here, it would be super immersion breaking. Now, we know not to access the personal accounts, and that makes Father Elijah appear on the Vault Security Intercom. Now, we do have dialogue options that we can go over with him in regards to Veronica, and I thought about doing that, but again, trying to be in character here, that's not the first thing on his mind. We know about Elijah, who he is, and what Veronica has said about him. I'm thinking that our protagonist's first thoughts regarding this guy are, we want to stab him until our knife spear breaks. That might take a while, though. Anyway, he gloats and holds it over our heads that he's not going to let us go, and we're going to go and meet up with him outside for a quote-unquote talk. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to go and wait behind one of these little Tesla coil generator-looking things here. And despite the fact that we are hidden, you see it up there, hidden in that nice Fallout 3 green, Father Elijah apparently spots us, activates the force field, and activates the turrets, but because Dean and Christine are alive still, they can deactivate some of the turrets. We'll have to destroy one with our holo rifle, not a problem, but once we destroy that, out comes Father Elijah, and he does have a Gauss rifle. He can do a lot of damage, but I have to say here, Father Elijah, with all of his brilliance, his planning, his meticulous, down-to-the-T micromanagement of details, you'd think that maybe, just maybe, he would have thought to have brought power armor to battle the captive, who most certainly wants him dead. I mean, case in point, he's already dead. Now, I would have preferred the alternative route where we can trap him inside of the vault. I think that's a much better end for Father Elijah. But since we didn't, we have to exit the old-fashioned way. And much like an unwanted venereal disease, that bomb collar is going to be the bane of our existence for one final time. Now, the bomb collar's ticks are a lot slower here. As long as you don't make too many mistakes, you should be able to get out of here no problem. Unlike getting here, which allows for no room for error, you can usually get away with one or two small little mishaps. And as we make our way through here, exiting the Sierra Madre and leaving for one final time, if we could put companions in the DLCs, you know who I think would be perfect for Dead Money? Boone. His bloodlust for the Legion is certainly understandable, but what he truly cannot let go of is the Bitter Springs Massacre. Also understandable, though. The combined grief of Carla's death, the death of his unborn child, as well as the Bitter Springs tragedy. Yeah, I can definitely see Boone fitting the theme of Dead Money perfectly. And getting him to come to the Sierra Madre, however, that would be the part that's a little harder to write in. But we don't gotta worry about that this run, because this is not a Craig Boone run. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Ah, well, that was some real heavy stuff. We're back out here in the Mojave wasteland and chilling out at the field shacks here. We're gonna test out another toy on our pal, Joe J-Boy. I bet you guys thought we were only going to use the Brotherhood Gladius the entire run. No, there's a bunch of other weapons that come with this mod, and this one's pretty cool. It's called the Glock 86 Plasma Pistol. Although the base for its design is the transponder from Old World Blues, it is designed enough to look pretty original. It has the reload animation of an SMG, and its built-in scope resembles that of the 9mm scope, which you can mod onto any 9mm pistol that isn't Maria. Pretty cool. But why are we killing Georgia Boy? Well, our elder told us that there was some guy ripping off innocent people and sending them to their deaths to profit off of them, so we took care of it. Now, by this point, we've accumulated a ton of scrap metal, and we do the usual quests like Ain't Misbehavin', but, well, this time around, it's not as simple as just fast traveling here. No, we attracted the attention of some cazadors. And what's that? Another weapon? A two-handed greatsword? Ooh, yeah. And the real icing on the cake here is that we hit level 24, which means it's time for us to take another perk. I'm thinking right about now, there's some good ones we can take, but we should take better criticals. We don't need VATS mode for that, thankfully. And yeah, I put in that Dissolve Fade because I only put on one ballast, came back, and had to go put on another one. Yeah, I did that right after Dead Money. My brain was super fried. We're going to Vault 34 and help Veronica find some proof for Elder McNamara, and apologies for the sword's textures occasionally breaking. I'm not sure why it's doing that. Trying to add in more complex mods like this has been a process for me. But I gotta say, it's been a very fun process and something I'm eager to learn and get better at. Yeah, Vault 34 is super easy, not much of a problem for us. The Overseer is some orange-looking Feral Ghoul Reaver, but you can kill him very easily, especially us with our Hollow Rifle. It only took a few shots because, to my understanding, as long as you never enter the room, he never leaves his desk, which is elevated. And the item that we're looking for here in Vault 34 is the Pulse Gun, and because that does count as a quest item, we'll be allowed to use that for the duration of Veronica's companion quest, I Could Make You Care. Now, although our protagonist's main concern is to help Veronica, he is helping out Elder McNamara because although McNamara has been pretty much alright working with us, everybody else in the Hidden Valley bunker is pretty much ready to shoot us on sight. If not for McNamara, they would. Don't forget, our chapter had been declared rogue a very long time ago. And with how different the West Coast is from the Midwest, yeah, there's not much of a chance they would ever want to reconnect or join forces. Still though, McNamara, being the opportunist that he is one to try and take advantage of the situation to better his chapter. And because of Veronica, our protagonist is kind of on the same page. However, our Elder, we'll just call him Elder Blackthorn going forward for the sake of ease. Elder Blackthorn has ordered us to work alongside McNamara, do whatever he asks, just to keep tabs on him. Anyway, Vault 22, probably the most difficult vault we have to travel to for McNamara's big quest. It's my favorite vault in this game. It's super creepy, the monsters are scary looking, and the lore behind this vault is legitimate nightmare fuel. The thing is, though, that because the spore carriers like to ambush their prey, it takes them a moment to get up, so as long as you're crouched and you're hidden, you can sneak attack them while they're getting up. It makes them a lot easier to deal with. Here in Vault 22, we're looking for HEPA cartridge cleaners because the filtration system in the Hidden Valley bunker has seen better days. I was really proud of my performance here. It only took me about 7 real-life minutes to get through this place from start to finish. More like 7.5, but point being under 10 minutes in Vault 22, that's because I used to get lost here all the time. I can never forget where that little card is. Now, throughout Veronica's companion quest, we can guide her in 2 directions. We can have her stay with the Brotherhood, or encourage her to go join the followers of the Apocalypse. Again, we offer her to join our chapter because our character really likes Veronica. They become very good friends by this point, I like to think. But much like Christine, she respectively declines, and that was probably a good call because, well, I don't think the West Coast would like one of their own joining a traitorous side, the defectors, the quote-unquote inferior rogue chapter. Luckily for us, they're interested, so all they gotta do is come back tomorrow to meet with Dr. Schiller. However, when we come back, things are, not looking so hot. There's a lot of powder on the ground. A powder I wouldn't start. Well, I wouldn't take in that powder anyway, but you know what I mean. And what's this? Midwest power armor? Okay, something's up here. What's going on? Yeah, you like that little personal touch? So in addition to these guys wanting to kill Veronica on the suspicion that she was sharing secrets, turns out that we lost a couple of our brothers to these guys and some others, and they took our superior power armor and are planning on taking ours when they kill us. It's to send a message to the Midwest. Once a traitor, always a traitor. Now, it's unlikely that McNamara ordered this hit, but our character knows what the chains that bind are, and he knows who Paladins listen to and who has the authority to send them out on missions like this. So in addition to these Paladins wiping out this follower's outpost in an attempt to kill Veronica as well, they have basically declared open war against the Midwest bunker. The Innovator tells Veronica that none of this is her fault. She didn't control these guys. It's the Hidden Valley bunker's fault for doing this, and McNamara's for not keeping his underlings in check. We're going to go report this to Elder Blackthorn, and turns out that he says because this is currently under wraps, just continue to play along and see how McNamara reacts. Go ahead and finish up his little errand. We send Veronica back to the Lucky 38 because from here on out, we need to blow some steam, and what better place to do that than Vault 11? This has the last required item that McNamara needs to clear out the air filtration systems. And well, I forgot that I have Animal Friend here, which made this a bit more of an interesting experience because the giant rats, the ones that I didn't kill once I remembered I took that perk, actually help us take out the praying mantises here. Still though, besides one major league ouchies trap, this place is extremely easy. As we grab the last item needed to fix the air filtration system, lots going through the innovator's mind as he gets ready to return to McNamara. Having not been attacked on sight upon entry, it's clear that this hit squad was not approved of by the Elder. I thought this was a neat little twist because in the main timeline, it's McNamara who sends out Paladins behind Hardin's back, and while Hardin is the head Paladin, thus not breaking the chains that bind, he is doing this without the Elder being the wiser. I can see this willingness to work with an enemy, causing this version of the Hidden Valley to start supporting head Paladin Hardin as the new Elder, and them becoming more vocal about it. McNamara wants us to hit up Black Mountain, but unbeknownst to him, we took this little device back to Elder Blackthorn. He had it reverse engineered. We do still stick it in there, but now we are receiving the signal, and we've been given the order to take out the Hidden Valley bunker. But before we do that, I actually got this idea. It was inspired by the Lion's Pride and the Outcast from Fallout 3. The dynamic between those two is actually done pretty well in Fallout 3. Castan and the Outcasts, the true Brotherhood, are hostile to the Lion's Pride. And that's with Lions not changing the Brotherhood nearly as much as the Midwest faction did. The Brotherhood is very by the book. It's their way or the highway. Somewhere out there, Arthur Maxon loved that. Now to conserve our own resources, we pickpocketed Elder McNamara and Head Paladin Hardin. We killed Head Scribe Taggart for his key. And under the effects of a stealth boy, we can go ahead and make our way on out of here. I take a bit of a risk killing that Brotherhood scribe, but I think it pays off because that one seems to have very good perception, even if we're using a stealth boy. And the one positive for us, at least from a mechanical standpoint, is because we did everything McNamara asked of us, so Veronica will not leave our party. Hey, it was finally cool to do a run where we focus on the Brotherhood and Veronica. All said and done, it's time for the next DLC. Honest Hearts, Zion, here we come. As we fulfill the wishes of a widowed private, before making the journey to the Northern Passage, let's go over what we've done in the meantime. First off, I scoured the Mojave in search of skill books, and visited locations I've not been to in years as a result. Cool part about that was that it felt consistent with how the run began, as I hadn't been to the Monte Carlo in a while either, paying the Scorpions a good little visit and all that. We completed Cass's companion quest, going the lawful route over Vigilante. We also completed Raoul and Lily's quests. Now, I've explored those in greater depth than other runs. I covered Cass's in my Preston Garvey and Lucas Sims runs, as well as Raoul's and Herbert Dashwood's runs. I almost said runs there, whoops. Unfortunately, I was a bit too eager to move forward with our story, and unless I missed something, we won't have the opportunity to upgrade Eddie. Now, that's okay though, because we can get the upgrades for him in Lonesome Road. So we'll get some love too when his counterpart from the Divide transmits the data and upgrades we'll acquire once we're there. As mentioned before, I wanted to make Veronica the main focus for this run. Lord knows that she's overdue for some serious love, considering how many times she's died in our challenge runs. And speaking of the run, let's talk a bit about the next DLC. When you start out, you have a limited carrying capacity of 75 pounds, and one of the ways to circumvent that is to have a survival check of 50 or higher. Now, we will exceed that minimum, so our weight capacity is bumped up to 100. And while I don't mind traveling to Zion in power armor, Dead Money got me thinking that I could use BoS gear that's not power armor, because, well, we're super tanky, and this is a challenge video. I figure we can hook up the Innovator with the assassin suit from Dead Money instead. So basically, we'll be taking a lot more damage and have about 25 extra pounds we can carry with us. Energy cells and microfusion cells do weigh a lot, you kinda take that for granted. So, quick recap. For Honest Hearts, we will have the Assassin Suit, Gauss Rifle, our Glock 86 Plasma Pistol, and our trusty Brotherhood Gladius. I figured Gauss Rifle over Hollow Rifle because the former requires 5 microfusion cells to shoot, and you gotta reload after every shot. Let's say you got 50 microfusion cells, that's 10 shots in total. It's powerful, but you gotta be sure you hit what you're aiming at. Oh, and fun fact, we're almost the level cap. Just a reminder that Logan's Loophole caps us at 30, and it's really starting to sink in that we're going to be missing out on a ton of XP, skills, and perks. Feels like this was the right call to make because of all that stuff we will be losing out on. Since this is the first video where we'll be covering this DLC, let's talk more about the story. From our Pip-Boy, we can hear a radio broadcast from a group called the Happy Trails Caravan, and they're looking for one more addition to their collection. Jed's the name of the guy running this particular caravan, and so far he's accompanied by a merc named Stella and some guy named Ricky, disconcertingly wearing a vault jumpsuit and a Pip-Boy. Well, his is actually broken. There's a lot of skill checks involved with Ricky, and Stella has quite the interesting backstory. We've got 2 additional unnamed caravan guards as well. Jed is looking to make contact with New Canaan in an attempt to get Happy Charles' caravan back on track due to its declining business between their caravans getting sacked, as well as the ever-growing competition from the likes of the Crimson Caravan. Considering Cass's companion quest, I would not be surprised if the Crimson Caravan had a hand in disrupting their operations outside of the Mojave. Jed's willing to pay us half in advance, and half upon completion of the escort. Pretty standard stuff. Now, if you remember from earlier in the video where I talked about how our garrison actually made a brief pit stop at New Canaan, this would have been before the events of Honest Hearts, and naturally because we'll come to find that something about that settlement here in a bit, but for the purposes of the Innovator's story, Elder Blackthorn, that's just a random name I came up with, so we didn't have to keep calling him stuff like our Elder, Midwest Mojave Elder every single time, tasked us, the traditional way and such, not violating the chains that bind, to accompany this caravan because our boys have their own vested interest in the New Canaan settlement as well. As far as our companions go, Jed seems to be a pretty decent fella, giving us plenty of warnings about the locals, what to say, what not to say, and he's straightforward and transparent about the task at hand. Ricky, well, he's a bit of a creep, being extremely generous with that, and talks a big game without seeming to realize that he gets many details of his alleged feats of strength wrong. Credit where credit's due, though. Ricky's skill checks are an alternative to that 50 survival check we talked about earlier. This is in case your survival skill is low, and the dialogue options to uncover him as a fraud come with well-written dialogue. And Stella, you get to know her for about 5 minutes as she's quite open about her past, which does lead tons of credibility as to why Jed hired her. Ricky's a fraud and Stella is quite legit. Won't cover that dialogue here since we got plenty, but in another Honest Heart-centered run, I'll be sure to do so. The in-character reason is because our character managed to secure the final spot in the nick of time, and well, it's 2 weeks from the Northern Passage to arriving in Zion, so the Innovator would get to know his traveling cohorts well enough in due time. And that brings me to this encounter. This is a scripted battle where a tribe called the Whitelegs ambush us and kill off everyone in this caravan except for the player. What really aggravated me about this the very first time I played Honest Hearts is that I actually killed all the Whitelegs except for one, because I couldn't. No matter how quickly you clear out the Whitelegs, the last one always becomes invincible until every last member of the caravan sans you is killed. I don't know about you, but I found this to be extremely lame, because it's entirely possible, though a bit difficult, to kill this raiding party. I remember wanting to save Jed, the guards, and Stella. Ricky, I mean, the Wasteland is kind of better off without him, but I would take saving him too if it meant we weren't locked into one means of plot progression. The kill console command does not work either, something I tried back in, I want to say 2022. Gosh, I was still living in Morgantown, West Virginia at that time. Time flies. Anyway, that gripe aside, this DLC is very fun and I enjoy it quite a bit. Tons of new loot, some cool characters, including 2 temporary companions exclusive to Honest Hearts. And gotta say, this change of scenery is so refreshing. Reminds me a little bit when I ventured through Oasis from Fallout 3 for the first time, and well, it's just nice to see that there are parts of the land formerly known as the United States that was not consumed by the nuclear apocalypse. After the failed ambush, we meet up with a friendly local who goes by the name Follows Chalk. Follows Chalk hails from the Dead Horses tribe, and after we explain to him why we're here on behalf of the now slain Happy Trails caravan, he is eager to escort us to his tribe's territory here in Zion. We can dismiss him if we want to, but I kind of want to keep him around. I like this guy. I figure it'll be good to have an escort as well as an extra pair of hands should we get caught up in any trouble. Plenty of that in store. In the main timeline, the story of Honest Hearts truly kicks off here. After this caravan of the Happy Trails expedition is destroyed by the marauding Whitelegs tribe, we're looking to get back to the Mojave Wasteland. In order to do this, we'll need to assist the Dead Horses and a neighboring tribe called the Sorrows. Now, the third option would be to just kill Follows Chalk, thus starting the Chaos Within Zion quest where everybody's hostile to us. But we're not gonna do that. It might be fun to try in a future challenge, though. Anyway, you see, the Whitelegs just aren't a problem for us. They're a problem for this entire region. The Whitelegs were promised induction into the Legion by Kaiser himself if they succeed in killing a man named Joshua Graham. Hold that thought for a sec because this is, of course, a lie. Caesar has deemed the Whitelegs too savage to be worthy of joining his growing empire. When he has a loose affiliation with the fiends in the Mojave, and he's okay with that, you know the Whitelegs are a real piece of collective work. He views them in a similar light to the fiends, except less useful. Oh, and real quick, our protagonist does have the Sneering Imperialist perk, but our version is a little different. Of course, I didn't change it mechanically, as I don't personally have the know-how, but our character would have no disdain towards tribals, raiders, and the like. Oh yes. But not tribals. For our purposes, just replace the tribal in the perk's description with the Legion. So you'll see the dialogue options for that perk come up, but we're never going to choose them. I just figured that besides that little detail, the perk kinda works for the innovator, the whole 15% increase to damage to raiders and the like. You gotta think, he and his Midwest brothers have been battling raiders and smaller groups, not unlike the Legion, but nowhere near their size for quite a while now. Anyway, as we're greeted by the dead horses, we meet up with Joshua Graham. He is the predecessor of Legi Atlanteus and co-founder of the Legion. Upon the Legion's defeat at the first battle for Hoover Dam, Caesar had to make an example out of his highest-ranking officer to show that failure will not be tolerated, no matter the rank. No matter how much one has contributed to the Legion's success, one failure is one too many. Unless you're Courier 6, who can continuously smart him off, fail the main story quests, but, you know, Caesar's mind just isn't what it used to be, I guess. The only time I can actually think of him making good on his threat is if you wake him up despite his warning, and can't say I blame him. I love my sleep too. Anyway, I'm sidetracking. Graham is the spiritual leader of the Dead Horses, and he wants us to collect some pre-war traveling supplies, such as a compass, as well as some medical kits we can salvage and sterilize ourselves. His ally, a new Canaanite named Daniel, wants the Sorrows and Dead Horses to abandon Zion, to flee from the Whitelegs. We'll get back to Joshua's stance on this here in a little bit. But Daniel is the one who has a full detailed map of Zion. We help Graham and Daniel, we get the map. Now that's all main game story stuff, and I'd say this actually works quite well for our protagonist too. Elder Blackthorn sent us to make contact with New Canaan, as our battalion had done so previously some time ago. But with the news of that settlement's destruction, we have to report back to our garrison in the Mojave. As Vic has a bit of history, though brief, with New Canaan, he'd feel obligated to help Joshua and Daniel in their endeavors, so we take Follow's Chalk with us and start scouring Zion for the supplies. One perk that makes traveling through Zion a lot easier is the Animal Friend perk. Geckos and canine beasts won't attack us. Yagwai normally don't, as of Fallout 3, but there's a variation here in Zion that's unaffected by this perk. The giant Yagwai are real tough. Abominations such as Rad Scorpions and Cazadors, yes, they're here too, are also not affected by Animal Friend, so we have more than just the Whitelegs to fight. Speaking of the Whitelegs, one great advantage they have over their enemies is that the Sorrows and Dead Horses are held back by cultural superstitions regarding pre-war structures. The Whitelegs, more akin to raiders, have no such restriction and are happy to desecrate these sites. See, the Dead Horses and Sorrows are self-sustaining tribes, with the latter having very few warriors, as they're more of a hunter-gatherer tribe. It's not until Joshua Graham hit the scene did the Dead Horses become as skilled in combat as they are, all in the name of defending themselves against the Whitelegs. Now, compare that to the Whitelegs, who are known to have no ability to survive on their own. They survive simply by scavenging and stealing, so yeah, they're raiders. As for our boy Follow's Chalk, he's a little bit different from his kinsmen. While he respects his people's beliefs, he doesn't believe in the superstitions themselves, and as such, is the perfect companion for us here in our travels. Though he's a temporary companion, we'll need to keep him stocked with stim packs and the like so he can heal himself. Both companions of Honest Hearts are specialized in melee and unarmed combat, so we have some great synergy with Follow's Chalk here. Now, we've already obtained the compass and the med kits because we have Animal Friend we can get with no problem at all, because there are a bunch of geckos inside of the ranger station where you acquire them. And after this battle here, believe it or not, we're already about a third done with Honest Hearts. Our next destination is the Narrows, where we're to meet up with Daniel, drop off the supplies, and then help him out and see what he wants us to do next. Now, as we enter the Narrows, we're greeted by another temporary companion, one named Waking Cloud. As an older, more experienced member of her tribe, she's going to be a great addition to us while we're here in Zion. Now, Waking Cloud has something pretty cool on her. She has a Yagwai fist. Not too dissimilar from the Deathclaw gauntlet we could craft back in Fallout 3. Now, there is a side quest that we can do to obtain this item, but we're not going to do that this time around. The next time that we run Honest Hearts here on the channel, we will explore that quest, as well as other parts of Honest Hearts I'd like to dive into. Normally, I would go all out with exploration, but because this video is already getting pretty darn long, and we've got 2 more DLCs to go, and the final battle, I'd say we're just going to stick to the main story for the most part.
It's a real shame too, because my favorite character in Honest Hearts is a guy named Randall Clark. Most people like Joshua Graham the most, and can't say I blame them. He is quite awesome, but Randall Clark was always my favorite, and what was interesting to me about him is that you never actually meet him because he's been deceased for quite a while. You only get to know about him through the terminal entries you read. And my god, is it some of the most masterful storytelling. Like, I remember reading those for the first time, and I got a little emotional, man. I'm not gonna lie. That was such a sad, but also kind of uplifting story. He's dubbed the Survivalist, and the Survivalist has 6 caches we can locate throughout Zion. If we get one, that would be pretty great. I think we have to encounter at least one of them. And by stumble across one of them, I mean it just happens to be where we have to go for Zion's main story. So Waking Cloud tells us to go to Daniel, who's waiting for us, and we make contact with him. He does want to leave Zion, but there's a couple more things that have to happen before we can make this happen for him, should we decide to take his side. In a nutshell, we have to seal off some tunnels, disarm some white leg traps, and take out some white leg camps so that we can safely evacuate Zion. And from here, Follows Chalk will make his way back to the Dead Horses camp, and Waking Cloud becomes our companion. Kind of a shame you can't have them both with you. I like both these characters a lot. But if I had to pick, I think I prefer Waking Cloud's perk over Follows Chalk's Well Karned perk. Now, Daniel is a new Canaanite, much like Joshua Graham. He does mean well, though I'm not a fan of how he views tribals as kind of ignorant. We'll go into more detail a little bit later on here in the Honest Hearts part of this challenge. And speaking of our companion, we gain the Shadows perk, which lowers enemy perception, namely the white legs, which makes it a little easier for us to sneak around. Man, if you could combine that with Lily's Stealth Girl, you would be the sneakiest of sneaky. We would have the sneakiest of beeping if we were Eddie. As we get ready to make our way forward, we are stopped by Joshua Graham, and this is where we really start to think about what we want to do. Again, Daniel wanting to evacuate Zion, and Joshua Graham wants to stand his ground and fight, and I have to agree with Graham on this one. Simply evacuating Zion is not going to stop the White Legs from rampaging throughout Zion. In fact, it would be worse for the region in general. However, as he is the Malpais Legate, Joshua Graham is a little eager for battle here. And it's after our conversation with Joshua where we start to get ideas of what we want to do. I can tell you right away, I only ever sided with Daniel once, and that was to get the achievement for Fallout New Vegas on Steam. I will say, though, that it is the much more challenging of the two options available to us. Getting back to Daniel, he means well and has the best interest of the Sorrows at heart, but he sort of has a patronizing view of them, and that's quite evident in a particular side quest we can do for Waking Cloud. You see, her husband perished in a recent White Legs attack, and Daniel knows this, but refuses to tell her because he fears it will impair her judgment in the crucial events to come. He plans on telling her after the fact, but him thinking that she can't handle the news is, well, kind of asinine. Waking Cloud is probably older, certainly wiser than he is. Still, Daniel has had a profound and overall positive impact on the Sorrows. Because he's fluent in their language, he has taught them the revered religion of the new Canaanites. I really like Waking Cloud's interpretation of it, as it mixes well with her cultural superstitions and makes her even more nervous about entering sacred places. Yeah, speaking of our companion, we almost lost her there. I like to consider that part of the challenge, trying to keep our temporary companions alive. It's not required, but I'd like to keep them alive all the same. Now, I mention entering sacred places because we have to enter a particular cave to plant some C4 and destroy the tunnels, or rather, cause a cave-in so no Yagwai or potentially White Legs can use them to cut us off. And I gotta say, we have quite a few options to choose from here. We can be a real jerk in this part of the game. But I think that it's in our best interest, and the interest of our allies, to respect their beliefs, but we do have to search the cave, so that's what we're gonna do. Gonna be quick about it, though. I say that, then I realize, I'm like, oh, wait, no, it's, this is the cave with the giant spore plants. Yeah, Vault 22 is not done with their shenanigans here, either. The destruction of the tunnels will come a little bit later, but we're actually going to bump into a good old survival cache here, courtesy of our pal Randall Clark. And the spore plants are super easy to kill at this point. It helps that they're immobile as well, so they're easy target practice. Now, the item that we need from here is called the Grand Staircase Map Holotape. That'll help Daniel and the Sorrows navigate their way through said staircase, should we choose to evacuate. And that does indeed come from 1 out of 6 survivalist caches. I decided to paw through the terminal here because it had been a while since I had read the story of Randall Clark. Of course, you get to experience his story throughout the terminals located throughout Zion. It's on screen now if you want to read along with it, but man, it's... You know, I gotta do something for this character. I mean, maybe not a challenge video because, like, Randall Clark is not alive, right? But if a character profile is something you guys would be interested in, let me know and I'll add that to the list of videos to work on. It'll be a hot minute before we tackle it, but again, if you guys want it, I'll do it. Next up is us disarming the traps of the White Legs, and we'll take out some along the way because that never hurts anything. Now, just like in Dead Money, we will have access to some of the weapons here exclusive to Honest Hearts, but only for the purposes of the DLC. Like, for Dead Money, we kinda had to, but I feel like using weapons exclusive to the DLCs kinda goes hand in hand with the whole, we'll call it the salvaging gimmick of the Midwest back in the good old days when they just started up next to Brahmanwood, had to salvage everything they could get. But I am going to limit that and just flat out not allow the 45 auto pistol because that's a really strong weapon. Plus, once Joshua Graham helps us out a little bit later on, we're not gonna need him anyway. Follows Chalk, Waking Cloud, our companions from Dead Money, and Joshua Graham are another reason why I don't ban companions from runs, especially since I play on hardcore mode. In instances where we tackle the DLCs, you're gonna have companions with you, unless you're going through Old World Blues. Even Lonesome Road, you have a companion who is invulnerable even if you're in hardcore mode. He is the one and only, but we'll get to that a little bit later. We still have to get through Honest Hearts and Old World Blues before we tackle that good stuff. As we make our way to the White Legs camp, there are 3 of them. If we take their totems, according to Waking Cloud, it will demoralize them. Well, we'll do that, and we'll kill everyone in the camp too. I think Joshua Graham would approve of this course of action. And along the way, of course, we're going to be doing battle with some giant Yao-Guais who just happen to be in the area. Never hurts to kill those, because there's a GRA challenge for clearing out 10 of them, which it doesn't matter too much with a Logan's Loophole character. But the Yao-Guai meat is still pretty awesome, 10% damage increase. That stacks with Psycho and Slasher, so we can really lay the beat down on our enemies. Thanks to our sneak attack and just generally strong weapon, they're not too bad, but again, just a reminder, every 5 microfusion cells is 1 Gauss rifle shot. If we miss, we are wide open, and so is our companion. With all the immediate threats extinguished, now we have the high ground here. We can go ahead and have Waking Cloud wait while we check out the area, and thanks to our awesome sneak skill, we're gonna stealth around the camp and try and Metal Gear our way past these guys. As we make our way to the camp, we're gonna brandish our trusty Brotherhood Gladius. Now, although Waking Cloud is on standby, we do have the benefit of her perk, so the White Legs are gonna have a lot more trouble seeing us. Combine that with our awesome sneak skill, as well as our silent running perk, yeah, we should be good. Might not be able to silently kill all of them, but the element of surprise should allow us to take out at least one of them. And while we're doing this, let's talk about our protagonist's opinion of these current events and his traveling companions, recent allies, all that good stuff. The Innovator has great respect for Follows Chalk and Waking Cloud. They've been a tremendous help to him ever since we got here in Zion. Graham, he was a little skeptical about it first, but it's pretty clear that this guy is ripe with inner demons and regrets his actions as a legionary every day. His part in aiding the dead horses, as well as getting reconnected with his old faith, is really helping him out, even if just a little bit. As for Daniel, well, his heart's in the right place, though. Funny though he calls the Sorrows ignorant, he is a bit ignorant himself. Still, Daniel's many positive traits far outweigh these flaws of his. After all, nobody's perfect. And as we've been adventuring through Zion and helping out the dead horses and the Sorrows, our protagonist is coming to the realization that evacuating Zion, while Daniel means well, is not really going to help anything. It's important that the dead horses and the Sorrows stand and fight. Sending a message to the White Legs will also send a message to Kaisar. As we take out these White Legs, all we gotta do now is backtrack to where Waking Cloud is stationed, help her out, although when we make our way to her, we're gonna find out that she doesn't really need our help all that much. She's got a killer right hook without Yao-Guai Fist. With the advanced scouts complete, let's hit up those Yao-Guai tunnels and actually detonate the C4 correctly, properly this time. We are in the right place, I promise. Now, we were talking about Waking Cloud's side quest a little bit ago. Follows Chalk wants to leave Zion and go explore the wasteland. Joshua disapproves of this, saying that there's really not much out there worth seeing, and considering his experiences, you can see where his jaded perspective comes from. But he's also kind of right, because Follows Chalk doesn't have the street smarts for the wasteland, or wasteland smarts, I guess you'd call them. We can either agree with Joshua and persuade Follows Chalk to stay here in Zion, or we can persuade Joshua to encourage Follows Chalk to just follow his own destiny. We did the latter. All said and done back at the Narrows, we gotta wake up old Daniel here, and he does serve as a doctor, which is an excellent, much welcome addition to our travels here in Zion. But as we talk with him and he's ready to evacuate, we're telling him no, we're standing our ground, we're taking Joshua's side on this one. And I do think that Daniel gets a bit too much flack for this because, yeah, on one hand, evacuating Zion doesn't really solve anything, but his perspective is not without reasoning. It's understandable that he would want to show mercy in some way, shape, or form. I like where his heart is personally, but the problem with Daniel's option here is that the Whitelegs cannot be reasoned with. They have left so much chaos and destruction in their wake. The idea of showing mercy in some way, shape, or form will be lost on them. I mean, don't forget that these guys also want to join Caesar's Legion. While Daniel is disappointed and a bit disheartened at this choice, he is going to respect our decision because we have been helping him and Joshua out the entire time. Once we're done here, we are going to rendezvous with Joshua Graham, where we'll have him as a temporary companion. And this is another reason why I banned the 45 auto, is because, well, Joshua Graham's perk buffs the living shenanigans out of them. So much so that Joshua, so long as he's in our party, can pretty much do all the fighting for us. While he's in our party, any 45 caliber has less spread and is twice as likely to score critical hits. Yeah, there's probably a good reason why he's a temporary companion. Now, although we're assisting Joshua, we have different mentalities in regards to how to deal with the Whitelegs. Now, the Whitelegs are set on exterminating the dead horses and the sorrows. Joshua is correct about this. However, Daniel's logic, again, not without reason, and we do agree with it a bit. There just might be a way to show some form of mercy in a language that the Whitelegs are personally capable of understanding. Oh, and you might have noticed that we have not been gaining experience points for some time. Yeah, that's because we hit level 30 a little while ago. As Joshua and us are bulldozing our way through the Whitelegs, it doesn't take too long before we get separated. That's fine, I guess we are hogging all of Joshua's experience points. But basically, he goes on his own to confront Saltupon Wounds. That's the chieftain of the Whitelegs tribe. And even without him there, these guys aren't too tough to take on, though I have to say I'm impressed with their durability, being able to tank a Gauss rifle shot or two. Despite how powerful it is, I find myself preferring the Brotherhood Gladius and our Glock 86 plasma pistol. Still though, for this final push, I'm thinking going Gauss rifle all the way, and good thing that Joshua is a vendor, because otherwise this would have been a lot more difficult. Maybe not difficult, just taking a little bit while longer, because between Super Slam and our excellent melee weapon skill, I don't think these guys would be difficult going that route either. As we press further into Whitelegs territory in an effort to get to Saltupon Wounds and his little guards, I figured to conserve ammo, let's go ahead and switch to the Gladius. Hey, I brought that up for a reason. Yes, a masterful segue, 6 out of 10. We're not alone, however, as Joshua has brought some dead horses to fight alongside us, and I gotta say, these guys are pretty good at fighting. Like, yeah, Joshua has been training them, but man, the Whitelegs really don't stand a chance. After dispatching this group of Whitelegs, we make a little breakthrough, and there's Joshua Graham, ready to execute Saltupon Wounds, and here's where we have another decision to make. Now, as Saltupon Wounds is literally in a fetal position cowering for his life, I mean, he is about to be executed, to be fair. We can either agree with Joshua and have Joshua just put him down, or we can try to show mercy in some way. Now, the speech checks needed to tell Joshua to stand down are pretty high, and by telling him to look around that we've already won, there's no need to execute him, we do succeed in this one. And once we hear what Joshua has to say on the matter, we try to talk him down further, but our speech check just is not high enough. Failing this speech check prompts Saltupon Wounds and the surviving Whitelegs to take action, so we have no choice but to defend ourselves now. However, giving Saltupon Wounds the chance to fight for himself shows honor to the other tribesmen around the Sorrows and the Dead Horses. A noble warrior's death leaves a better impression upon them than just executing them, as Joshua pretty much comes to the conclusion of. All said and done, we're out of Zion, and before we get to the next part of our story here, let's take a little trip down memory lane. Having received the summons to meet up with Ambassador Crocker from an NCR trooper, we did do this a little earlier in the run. It was just before going to the Northern Passage to make our way to Zion. And part of the request that I got was to join up with the NCR, or side with them. And I gotta say, I kinda liked hearing that because my first action would have been either to go independent or maybe strike an alliance with Mr. House, which I think would have flown. Especially once House realizes that the Midwest is very different from the Brotherhood of Steel that he knows and detests. But I thought that this would be a bit more of an interesting route to take. Now, the Midwest would never formally join the NCR because they would be, at this point in time, just as big, if not bigger, than the new California Republic itself. However, allying with the NCR and the prospect of gaining an ally from farther away is new unexplored frontier for the NCR. True, they may not be doing a great job at the moment here in the Mojave Wasteland. And while their forces are stretched thin, we know from earlier in the run that much of the NCR's stalling, we'll call it, was because of Chief Hanlon and him sabotaging information. The only reason we kept that secret was because the Rangers don't deserve to suffer for his actions. And at this point in time, our garrison would have been identified by the NCR, so it really is in our best interests to ally up with them. We have many a common enemy here in the Mojave. Now, let's get back to the present. After reporting to our garrison, we'd received word that the last of the powder gangers have been located. Suited up in our power armor again, like we hadn't seen an old friend in quite a while, we've been tasked with eliminating the last of this scum. This inconspicuous tunnel, completely unguarded due to reasons of there being fire geckos and night stalkers lurking within, is the perfect means for us to infiltrate Vault 19 and commence our mission. Compared to the Sierra Madre, as well as our journey through Zion, this seems so small and insignificant, but it must be done. It is still important. We've extinguished the fiends, the cons, and even small-time gangs like the Scorpions and Jackals. All that's left to restore order, aside from kicking the Legion out of the Mojave, but we'll get to that, is to take out Samuel Cook and his band of goons. Now, because we went in and started blasting the Great Cons earlier in the run, the powder gangers of Vault 19 are automatically hostile to us, and the quest, Why Can't We Be Friends, has long since auto-filled. Not that we want to help them in any way. I mean, we did a little bit earlier in the NCRCF, but that was all just a means to an end, as it involved wiping out smaller powder ganger camps, as well as guiding a bounty hunter away from danger, back when we were an unknown quantity, a wild card. It's pretty clear that the factions of the Mojave know who we are by this point, and that's just fine for our protagonist. As this is a mission handed down to us by Elder Blackthorn, once again by cooperating with our head Paladin and thus not breaking the chains that bind, we're going solo here, and even if we wanted to bring an ally with us, there's no need. These guys are small-time scum, hardly a challenge for us. With our armor repaired and ready for more action, there's little that can stop us. We have long since stopped gaining experience points, so aside from minor loot, we're here to wrap up the loose ends for this part of our story arc. Plus, Vault 19 is fun anyway. It's really easy to miss these guys and in your ending slide when you think you've done everything right. Like, oh yeah, the Vault 19 powder gangers. Well, crap, forgot to track those guys down. Yeah, it's a good thing that was part of our requirements for this run. We will have some business here in the Mojave, at least for a time, before we move on to the next DLC, Old World Blues. In our absence, we've also become a bit more involved with the inner workings of the Mojave, not just we as in our character, but our brothers in arms as well. While we were in Zion, Elder Blackthorn made contact with Ambassador Crocker, and as we've been doing great work in the Mojave, not just for the people, but also assisting the NCR unknowingly at first, a true alliance just might be in the works. As we are not involved with our West Coast counterparts in any way, in fact, as going by earlier in the run, we are hostile with them now. It's just another mistake that our Elder can learn from, learning from the mistakes of someone like McNamara, who might have had the best intentions for the Brotherhood, but we saw where his, leadership led. Don't forget, it would have been about 84 years since we've even made contact with our West Coast counterparts. Going out on a limb here, I think we're doing a lot better than they are. As we've already helped out the Boomers, the next order of business is to help Crocker with restoring peace here in Freeside. We're able to stop the violence here, at least in this part, but it's not going to last because, well, earlier in the run, we used our favor to become a member of the Kings to ingratiate ourselves and have more open-minded folks like the King himself be amenable to the Midwest. However, as our mission is to try and bring about peace between the NCR and the citizens of Freeside, hope is not lost. Officially, we have been ordered to go over to Colonel Moore at Hoover Dam, and if you watch my Robert McCready run, we did take that route, and you know what happened, but there is another option, an unofficial option, if you will. As we make our way over to Colonel Shu over at Camp McCarran, he's able to give Freeside more water, power, and food, as long as the violence there stops, something that is amenable on all sides. Well, almost all sides. We'll get to that here in just a sec. Crocker's happy, Shu's happy, the NCR's happy, we're happy, but who isn't, besides Colonel Moore? Back in Freeside, we approach the king and let him know that this is a misunderstanding, that there's no need for violence here. We tell him the terms and he's surprisingly open to it. However, Pacer is not, as are a small group of the kings. King says he won't stand by Pacer, and Pacer goes in shooting anyway. Pacer likes to talk a big game about how skilled he is, but, well, he and his little group of rebels here really don't stand a chance against a trained battalion of NCR troops. Especially because the king and most of the people in his gang are not assisting them. Yeah, they don't stand a chance. Peace was never an option with Pacer, and look where that led him. And while the king may be upset about the death of his friend, it was unavoidable. The best for all parties concerned, really, in the grand scheme of things. So as we go back to report the good news to Ambassador Crocker, Elder Blackthorn has assigned us with another task as we, thanks to us being in possession of the Platinum chip, have easy access to the Lucky 38. Like Crocker, Elder Blackthorn has attempted to reach out to Mr. House, and it has been met with radio silence. And you know what? We could use an embassy here in New Vegas. Our garrison is nice and well fortified, but if we're going to be in the center of the action, well, it's time for, shall we say, a change of occupancy in the Lucky 38. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the run, we have been collecting skill books and the like. I have also been on the lookout for snow globes, and I didn't get the one in the Sierra Madre. That is a shame because that's 2,000 caps we could have had, and we cannot return to the Sierra Madre. So before we follow through with Elder Blackthorn's order to take out Mr. House, we're going to turn in this snow globe and get a couple grand, and then we're going to go take care of business. Some people say it's good to work hard, others say it's better to work smart, not hard. We're working hard and working smart, so it's the best of both worlds. And yes, we are still in our snazzy business suit. I thought I would make this little part more challenging. As we enter and unleash Mr. House from his little capsule there, of course he's wondering why we've done this, although he kinda did it to himself in this scenario. It fits with House's uncompromising nature. You know, we tell him who we are and what we have planned, and he perceives it as a vanity project doomed to fail. Doesn't help that he detests the NCR as well and thinks that they're nothing but a bunch of snakes, which is partly true depending on who you're talking about in the NCR. However, our character thinks that for all the flaws the NCR has, that they just might be the best option for the Mojave, with a helping hand, that being us, of course. And I gotta say, I was not expecting his death scene to look like that, but hey, that works. It just works. Blackthorn also told us to go back and retrieve that rogue AI. We did tell him about this when we went back to report. The NCR might not like this move very much, as it does trigger Don't Tread on the Bear, but we have to have some assurance that the NCR is not going to try to strong-arm us, like they have with some of the other settlements here in this region. From their courtesy of Yes Man's information network, we can go straight for the Emeritus and take them out of the equation as well. Now, this is something we typically do in our challenge runs because the Emeritus are a big part of the story. A small part of a big part of the story. Kind of both, but well, this is my favorite one here. If you have a speech check of 80 or higher, you can convince Big Sal that Nero was going to backstab him after convincing him that that you never knew anything about the plan. And that's what our character does here, making our fight here much easier. We are aware of Kachino's past deeds, and we are going to be watching this guy like a hawk. Still, he's in ours and the NCR's pocket, so better to have this guy on a tight leash than have Big Sal and Nero running around. That also cuts off more aid to the Legion. Alright, it's Old World Blues time. Elder Blackthorn has us investigate this strange piece of technology, and well, once we do that, we end up getting teleported inconspicuously to this place where we find ourselves in a patient gown, though whoever captured us, you're gonna find out here in a sec, not exactly the brightest, as evidenced by the fact that they left our power armor helmet on. Turns out that the little movie projector is some kind of teleportation device that resulted in us being captured by a group calling themselves the Think Tank. Now, I covered this DLC in far greater detail in my first ever Milestone subscriber special when I went through Fallout New Vegas and Old World Blues as Myron from Fallout 2. That run had its own story just like this one, and that was pretty easy to pull off because all we had to do was just change Myron's ending a little bit to where he didn't visit the den that day and get shanked a bunch of times. I think if anything, that run showed that it's good that Myron met his fate. But I'll give you guys a quick little recap. Dr. Klein and the band of think tank scientists want us to obtain 3 pieces of technology they deem appropriate, for science of course. They want to go after the dreaded, the vile Dr. Mobius. And we sort of have to play ball with them because they have taken our brain, our spine, our heart, a bunch of stuff that we kind of need to survive, so we are a cyborg. And that kind of works out because part of the Innovator's character is that he has some cybernetic enhancements, so that's right up his alley. It comes full circle in the end. Anyway, rather than using the Gauss rifle for this, I figured to downsize a little bit and use that laser rifle that you find in Vault 22. Now we have the Robotics Expert perk, which allows us to deal 25% more damage to all robots, and if we're able to sneak upon them as long as we're out of combat, we have an option to disable them. Not sure how much the latter part of that's going to kick in because we're in a giant suit of power armor, so you could say sneaking around isn't our forte. Then again, we do have silent running, so hey, maybe. We'll see. Not only are we battling robots, but we're battling other lobotomites who are victims of the think tank, as well as these guys called Y7 Trauma Harnesses, who are a serious danger here. In my opinion, they're the toughest enemies in the Big Empty, and that might have looked easy, but we have a ton of healing hotkeys, so we were able to out-heal their damage. And, you know, we're wearing power armor. That helps too. Now, the first of the items that we want to track down is called the X2 Antenna. Once we obtain it, the schematics will get sent over via being uploaded to the think tank, and it's a pretty good melee weapon that we can use within the confines of the Big Empty. And I gotta say, tracking down old tech, making use of it, yep, that's not only like the old days back when our chapter just started out, but it is pretty true to the core tenets of the Brotherhood. The Midwest does still want technology, they're just not nearly as frugal about handing it out, because they're the ones in charge in their territory. And anytime that we obtain tech that Dr. Klein and his band of scientists want, we are attacked by robo-scorpions sent by the evil, dreaded, vile Mobius. And although they're not too tough to take down between the X2 Antenna's bonus damage to robots, stacking with Robotics Expert, we have to be mindful because anytime we destroy one, it does explode and cause damage to us. That explosion ain't no light show, yo. Another thing that makes these guys kinda tricky to fight is that they will retreat. In my experiences, when a Robo-Scorpion retreats, it's trying to bait you back to where some others might be lurking. For us, that's not much of an issue. All we gotta do is switch on over to our trusty laser rifle and we can take them out lickety-split. And as far as I've been able to tell, even if you disintegrate them with a laser weapon or turn them to goo with a plasma weapon, they still explode, inexplicably. Either that or there's something wrong with my game, but it's Fallout New Vegas. Would you be surprised? Next up, we have to retrieve an audio sample. But in order to do that, we have to clear the X8 institutional test. This place was designed by Dr. Boris, and, well, this guy's, shall we call them inner demons, really are on full display here. Now, just like the X2 Antenna, we are allowed to use the sonic emitter for the purposes of getting through the old world blues. And funny enough, that audio sample actually is an upgrade for the sonic emitter. There are several of them that you can find throughout the Big Empty. There's a bunch of cool little upgrades you can get for your little central station over at the think tank as well. I grab a couple of them throughout our journey here in the old world blues, but not focusing too much on it. Our objective here is pretty simple in concept. All we have to do is track down 3 terminals and obtain the grades of 3 particular students, 2 of whom Dr. Boris just loves talking about. All the while we have to get through cyberdogs, turrets, and lobotomites who are here. And just like with Honest Hearts, I do think that the standard story for Old World Blues actually gels pretty well with our protagonist's journey. He's not really sure what to think of these guys, although knowing a bit later on anyway, that these guys are responsible for the development of Night Stalkers and Cazadors. Well, we'll get to that shortly. I just know that straight away our protagonist is like, yeah, I'm pretty sure these guys are not scientists. I can't imagine what would give that away. Fighting our way through more cybernetic abominations, we're going to make our way to the final terminal, where Betsy Bright's disciplinary record is, along with her grades. All in all, not too shabby. We weren't in any serious danger there. Once we're done here, we'll have access to the chamber we need to enter to acquire the audio sample we've been sent to retrieve. And now, the thing about that audio sample is that it's located somewhere underground because this giant cybernetic dog, who presumably is the pet or former pet of Dr. Boris, who was fed a hearty, healthy diet of psycho-laced chow, has buried that audio sample somewhere, so we gotta go put Gabe down and then retrieve the sample. Considering how strong we are in melee combat, having Super Slam, and our bonus damage to robots, yeah, Gabe goes down real fast. Once he goes down, it's just a matter of tracking down where this thing is buried at, and of course, the dog will explode after 9.5 seconds. The countdown's supposed to be 10, but you know, these guys aren't exactly operating with all their eggs in one basket. And of course, once you obtain the audio sample, more Robo-Scorpions, but that's just more scrap metal for us. Now, you might have noticed I've been picking up scrap metal, duct tape, wrenches, all that good stuff, and because the Boomer's quests are already done, we don't have to give Jack any scrap metal. We need several items to craft one, and we need 2 scrap metal for every one of every other thing else, which is wonder glue, wrench, duct tape, and some other stuff I don't remember off the top of my head. Last but certainly not least is this Stealth Suit Mark II. I had to make a little trip over to the think tank to deposit some stuff so that we could have an appropriate carrying capacity. All we gotta do is test out this bad girl. Combine this with our high sneak skill, Il Fatoma, just in case we need some overkill for our sneak score, and silent running. Making our way through the first stage of this test, super easy. All we gotta do is remain undetected, pick up some top secret documents within the confines of this simulation, fight some more Robo-Scorpions part of the course, and we can move on. With all 3 pieces of tech in hand, Dr. Klein sends us to go deal with Dr. Mobius. And here to greet us is a giant Robo-Scorpion. Now, I've been using the stealth suit because, again, we don't have nearly as much protection for it as our power armor does. I figured the added challenge would be nice, but we can actually also put that other part of Robotics Expert to use here. The giant Robo-Scorpion is a pretty dangerous enemy. You're meant to jump around to take advantage of the high ground, but let's get down to its level and deactivate it, and then start beating on it. As our adorable Stealth Suit Mark II says, bad guys dealt with. I don't know who I like more, her or the Great Khan Armor, who we sadly had to put down this run. And once we make our way to Dr. Mobius, things are not quite as we expected. It turns out that the threats Dr. Mobius was issuing was because he was riding the high of some psycho, so to speak. Apparently this was all a big misunderstanding. And once we help with adjusting his monitor, and we're a bit more friendly and amiable to him, he's like, "Oh, your brain? I don't think it wants to leave, but yeah, go get it." We're able to pass a pretty high intelligence check courtesy of Dr. Klein's glasses and some mentats, which Dr. Mobius graciously gives us some of. He loves mentats. God, I love this DLC. Now all we gotta do is just go ahead and get our brain, as you do. I kinda like the perks that come without having a spine, heart, or brain, and it kinda fits with our innovator being cybernetic in some capacity. Still, though, it helps being able to rely on the old noggin, so we're gonna slip that bad boy back on in, make our way back to Dr. Klein, and because we've been helping out with their little side quests as well, as Dr. Klein tries to threaten us, Dala, Boris, Zero, and Garble Static Guy all take our side. I feel like our protagonist wonders if this was what it was like to talk with the calculator. Probably not, because he would probably have some knowledge of the calculator, possibly even met it before, especially in this timeline where the calculator and the warrior became one. Still though, just like with Caccino back at the Omertas, the think tank scientist would be more of an asset, more valuable alive than dead, and I'm sure Elder Blackthorn's gonna really like to meet these guys. And you know what? That's more territory for our boys back at the Midwest. Once we finish up business with Dr. Klein here, who pledges his allegiance to the Innovator, we're gonna head on back to the good old Lucky 38 and take tabs on our companions, all that good stuff, because we've got a place to visit that's long overdue because we were given safe passage across the river. It's time to make good on that. And here's where I think we should bring a companion with us, but which one? Originally, our protagonist is thinking maybe Lily or Cass. Arcade's back in Freeside after hooking us up with the Remnant, so he's not an option. Turns out we're in for a bit of a surprise, however, as Craig Boone, our buddy who we thought went his own way, returned to the fold. We always did say that our door's open to him, and, well, I'm sure he would be eager to go to Cottonwood Cove just like we are, and certainly for the same reason. With Boone back at our side, what do you say we go ahead and set sail across the river? We're coming for you, Legion. Turns out that before we made our move on Fortification Hill, that we needed to ensure the safety of President Aaron Kimball. This is another quest we do often here in our challenges, and it's very much second verse same as the first. Our protagonist has the skill checks required to ensure his safety, so we have no problem with spotting a bomb planted on Kimball's vertibird. While this plays out, which will go into us invading Fortification Hill, let's talk about the current events surrounding our character and our brothers in arms in the Midwest Garrison. Since Elder Blackthorn had us install Yes Man into the Lucky 38, Blackthorn and Crocker have come to a mutual agreement. We're allowed to keep the Lucky 38, namely due to our actions and how much we've proven ourselves as an ally, in exchange for training the NCR Heavy Division so that they can learn how to properly harness power armor. That NCR salvaged armor, in time to come, will no longer be just that. Certainly our protagonist would be reminded of the Midwest's days of old, stories passed on about salvaging power armor to make something better over time. The Lucky 38 effectively becomes the Midwest Embassy. Not only are we going to help train the Heavy Division, but we've also agreed to share the tech contained within the Lucky 38 with our allies. Eventually, once the Mojave finds itself at peace, we'll be escorting an NCR vertebrate over to our territory so they can also set up an embassy. The idea of these two great countries, nations, whatever you want to call them, finding allies of comparable size is a new frontier for both of them, and one that could certainly usher in a new era of peace. Furthermore, it gives the NCR an extra edge when it comes to future battles with the Legion, as there's certainly more in store after securing the Mojave wasteland. The Securitron army is considered property of our forces, but we are retaining the old deal that was originally struck between the NCR and House. Securitrons and NCR MP are the only ones allowed to wield weapons out in the open inside of the Strip, in addition to Midwest Knights. As Vic and Boone deal with business by bringing the fight to the Legion's front door, Blackthorn is set to meet with General Oliver personally. No doubt this will be great for the Kimball Oliver administration's image, and because we kept Hanlon's secret early on, the NCR Rangers won't be treated poorly upon their return home. Sure, they won't be considered the asset they once were, but better to take a step back than have the reputation of many lives ruined. Yeah, the Innovator is definitely not a fan of the Chief, preaching to the choir there. Earlier in the run, we programmed Prim Slim and established him as a Midwest asset. This is still true, but Slim has since been reprogrammed to help keep the peace, but to recognize the new NCR Sheriff as authority. Prim Slim continues to maintain order in the Vicky and Vance Casino just like he always has. Speaking of Prim, we also did the optional unmarked quest to get supplies for McCarran's chef. I always found that guy to be an excellent vendor for hardcore mode, as he's always stocked with potatoes, great for regulating your hunger and thirst in hardcore mode. The foundation for long-term peace is in the works, but we're far from done establishing the first of those many building blocks. We had Boone stay back and cover our rear as we advance deeper into the camp ourselves. Knowing Boone's personal bloodlust for the Legion, we don't want him making any, shall we say, errors in judgment. He came here with us and we attacked this place together, so we are both going back. It's either both of us go back, or neither of us go back. I thought this part coming up was pretty funny right here. I'm trying to track down this veteran legionary, and I'm like, where did he go? I thought maybe he went inside of the arena or something to hide, but no. Turns out that parkour, a trick I picked up from an Elder Scrolls Oblivion Let's Play, just parkouring atop the arena here, finding him, aimed down and taking care of business. Yeah, gonna pan the camera out to see if we can find this guy, and we found him, and he's Dunyan Rings. You know, it's typically the recruit legionaries who like to run away, but this guy must be very, very afraid of us. Good, he should be. The Legion should be. So we're gonna fall back and get Boone, bring him inside with us, so he can join in the fun in attacking the Praetorians and the veteran legionaries stationed a little bit deeper in Fortification Hill. I kinda wish there was a way for us to permanently disable that howitzer, but there isn't, so c'est la vie, I guess. C'est la vie, right, veteran legionary? Thanks to Boone's spotter perk, we're able to point these guys up, take them out lickety-split, and we're gonna have him wait at the bottom of the hill once we clear out here, because once these guys are cleared out, next up is gonna be going into the tent itself to lure out Kaisar and his Praetorians. It's kind of a shame that Ilaria won't be there. You'd think that he would be once you kill Wolpez over in Nipton, but, well, whatever. I guess he's out on important Legion business. Just gotta take care of business here before we go ahead and go forward with that plan, and I gotta say, I don't know what's up with these guys this playthrough, because they just keep running away from us. I feel like this happens very rarely, if ever, because I don't personally recall the last time the veteran legionaries are running away from us. And you know what, before we go into the tent, speaking of Praetorians, let's lure the ones out from the inside station here. Now, because all Praetorians only have unarmed weapons, as long as we're able to maintain some level of distance from them, we should be alright. Bit of a tall order though, because as a power armor unit, we are a bit slow, but certainly quite tanky. They may be some of the most skilled units in Kaisar's Legion, but they are no match for us. And that's with us holding back, because we still have our buddy Boone and backup. With those Praetorians disposed of, and no risk of being attacked from our flank, we can have Boone take point at camp here while we head into the tent to lure out Kaisar and the other Praetorians. Now, as we approach this tent, we're going to prep up for this battle by hitting up some chems, all that good stuff, and go and pop one of our stealth boys. If we could dome shot Kaisar on his throne, that would be awesome. Also, it would cure him of his, shall we call them, cranial maladies. And, well, things don't exactly go according to plan, which was kind of frustrating at first, but I promise you this has some pretty epic payoff. So we're in a bit of a pickle here with that failed assassination attempt. Gotta head back outside and take care of the Praetorians. with Caesar joining the fray, so at least we succeeded in luring them out of the tent. Now the Praetorians have ballistic fists, while Caesar has a displacer glove. I gotta be a bit more careful around this little pack of Praetorians, plus their leader. We can use some turbo to slow down time because that's how taking chems works, I guess. And combined with Super Slam, we can at least knock these guys down, isolate them, and focus fire them one at a time. It's a bit of a slow strategy, but it seems to be working, and then I'm like, you know what, let's just whip out our signature rifle and start trying to blow these guys away. Well, we do, or we do not. There is no try. And not having much luck there, I'm like, you know what, let's switch back to our Gladius. We take out one Praetorian, leaving Caesar. And remember when I said that that failed assassination attempt had payoff? Well, watch this. We've got Caesar's attention. We're smack talking him a bit here. All the while, Boone is getting ready to take aim. And booyah, dome shot, baby. Would have been cool to assassinate Caesar right on his throne, but you know what? Having Boone kill him is always awesome. And once we're all said and done here, we can go ahead and give Boone a stim pack, regroup, talk things over. Yeah, we're both in a pretty darn good mood here, so all we gotta do now is head into the Securitron bunker and activate our reinforcements. Once Elder Blackthorn receives the signal, he'll send over a little cadre of our Midwest brothers over here to secure the bunker, which means that, yeah, the Legion's gonna be in a bit of trouble, and I'm sure that the NCR would just love to occupy this territory as well. Now, I forgot to use a Programmer's Digest to disable the Protectrons, but the turrets are disabled, and they're the far bigger threat here in my opinion, so it doesn't matter. The Protectrons that are destroyed here can always be rebuilt. What's important is that we get our hands on the Securitron Mark II arm, as well as, you know, using the Platinum chip for its original intended purpose. And all said and done here, we can send Boone back to the Lucky 38 once we're done in the Securitron bunker, report to Elder Blackthorn for our final mission before Hoover Dam. And it turns out that a small group of our brothers, 3 in total, went to investigate this strange wreckage by a canyon, and they haven't been heard back from since. So it's up to us to track them down. Hopefully we'll be able to find our brothers and sisters because there are so few of us out here in the Mojave. We lost 2 great men against the fiends at the start of this run, and to lose 3 more, that would be a serious blow to our numbers. Making our way inside of the Canyon Wreckage Passage here, yeah, this place has definitely seen better days. Now, just like with Old World Blues, I covered this DLC in greater detail in my Talon Company Mercenary run, where I played through Fallout New Vegas and Lonesome Road as a Talon merc. Now, because the story of Lonesome Road is centered around Courier 6 and Ulysses, and Courier 6 is not part of this story due to reasons of no longer existing, well, I'm looking forward to encountering Ulysses as the innovator here. Since Ulysses really doesn't have any knowledge of the Midwest Brotherhood, it's gonna throw him off. Let's see him bring his A-game to this one, shall we? Now, the only hint our protagonist would have of Ulysses' existence would be some offhand remark that Johnson Nash made back at the Vicky and Vance Casino. Something about another courier who turned down the job for the Platinum chip. The very same job that left one courier dead and buried upon the hill of Goodspring Cemetery. After teaming up with another Eddie Iba, unfortunately not the same one that we've come to know and love, but will come to be another one that we'll know and love because this little guy is very full of personality. If you remember earlier in the run where I said that we have an essential companion despite being on hardcore mode, yep, that's our little buddy right there. And as you just saw, he's more than useful in a fight, and as well as being a little pack mule. He will activate any commissaries for us, and that's going to serve as our point of transaction during our stay here at Lonesome Road, because let's just say that the locals aren't exactly amenable to doing trade with outsiders. And just like with the DLCs before this one, we're allowed to use unique weapons such as the Arc Welder, but I think I'm going to limit it to just the Arc Welder. And heck, in this version of events, this could be some of the weaponry that our boys were sent with, the 3-man battalion that went missing. Now, sentry bots are pretty darn vicious, but combine this weapon with that robotics expert damage buff, yeah, these things are toast, man. I'm just glad it's not the sentry bots from Fallout 4. Those things are a whole different level of beast. They're on a whole other level. Hey, speaking of the locals, we're about to come across some dead markmen. Those are the friendly locals I was talking about before. Well, these guys are gonna have a lot of valuable loot for us to sell. Now, this part coming up is pretty funny. We hack into the terminal and repair the turret so that it's on our side, but then I see that laser fire there and I thought maybe I messed up or something, or that was a malfunction, so I almost fried our friendly turret. Nah, we're good. I tell you what, man, no matter how many times I come here, this atmosphere always has me tense. But hey, no harm, no foul, and best of all, there's another commissary that Eddie can unlock for us. Now, remember early in the run where I said that I think I locked us out of being able to upgrade Eddie from the Mojave? Well, we can upgrade this little guy here at Lonesome Road, and he will send those coordinates and that data back to his Mojave counterpart upon completion of this DLC. After searching through the then commander's desk and rifling through all his goods, we're gonna go and hack into this hard-level terminal here, and believe it or not, we actually got through this on the first try, and rather quickly too, I must say. These terminals, I'm very bad at this mini-game, but I got pretty lucky with this terminal. We can go ahead and disable the security that'll trigger the sentry bots and be on our merry way. Once we're done with that, Eddie, our bro, will go ahead and unlock that commissary for us. Man, we've got a lot of points we can sell at. And trust me when I say that is the first of many, many commissaries. But there is going to be a place that I consider our base of operations, and a place I like to use anytime I go to Lonesome Road as our base of operations. As we open this door here, we only have to deal with a couple more sentry bots. They were not affected by the security shutdown, but no problem. And as we begin to loot the place and make our way outside, we are about to have our first encounter with, well, our character doesn't know who it is, but Ulysses, and he communicates to us through Eddie. He seems to think that we're an NCR agent, and I have to say that would be a fair assumption as he's unaware of the existence of the Midwest. Now, in the main story, he's trying to bait the courier to come to him so that he can get some revenge for what happened here at the Divide, as Ulysses wrongly blames Courier 6 for the destruction. But as he no longer has that goal in mind, being that Courier 6 went the way of the dodo, Ulysses' interest in us is also sparked by our three brothers who came through here, whom he claims to have seen them but not interacted with them in any way. He does tell us that we can find clues about their whereabouts if we move forward. Very vague directions, but I mean, that's what we're here to do anyway, so yeah, we'll be on our way, thank you, sir. And as I'm sure you've noticed, taking a break from the old Gauss rifle and busting out our hollow rifle, the one weapon that we're still allowed to use outside of the confines of dead money. I'll admit I'm a little biased, I really like this weapon. Our mission is to track down our brothers, and it would be in our best interest to look for this Ulysses as well. For all we know, he could be like one of the locals we saw pitchforked to the wall back inside of that silo. But speaking of those guys, we're about to have a formal introduction to the marked men, the wonderful locals here who are so accommodating. I mean, yeah, they're a little aggressive, but with all the loot that they drop for us and how valuable that is and how many caps we can swim in like we're Scrooge McDuck, oh yeah, I'd say that's quite the charitable greeting. Just think of it like Happy Festival fireworks. Yeah, it's good to be back here in the Divide. I miss this place. As we make our way towards Ulysses and our next destination, the collapsed tunnel, but I'll get to that. I just want to say, if you're still with me this far into the video, you are an absolute champion. This is without a doubt the longest project I have ever tackled for this channel. And as mentioned much earlier, I always had plans to do a run like this because, I mean, having all the DLCs in a challenge video sounded really cool, and the Midwest Brotherhood is my favorite faction in the entire series, but having this request come from a fan just really got me motivated to push this out the door. Though I will say videos of this magnitude I'm probably going to reserve solely for Midwest runs because, oh boy, this is, it's been a minute. I started this a while back, and I mean, between how much content we had to cover here and, you know, the fact that life gets in the way, because life always finds a way, because that's chaos theory. It's just great to be able to sit down and knock out the rest of this voiceover, and we're not even done yet. We still gotta get through Lonesome Road, the bulk of this DLC, one other special little event before the final battle, and then the final battle. Now, I'll follow up on that little monologue here in just a sec, but we gotta make our way through these marked men who are guarding this inconspicuous, destroyed little, would you call it a tower? Nah, I'd call it a, 2-3-story building? Yeah, that's right. Makes you wonder what this place used to be. Maybe a residence or a store or something? Well, all I know is that I see a white arrow pointing inconspicuously in a direction. Of course we're gonna follow it. In order to track Ulysses and our lost brothers, we're coming across this wonderful little gadget called a laser detonator, not too dissimilar from what Loyal had us use to lift the bomber from the lake earlier in the run. Only this laser detonator, think of it like playing laser tag with nuclear warheads that haven't gone off yet. It's a perfectly safe game. Who doesn't love laser tag? I can see why Saul was trying to get Walter White to open up a laser tag business. That's pretty much what I was thinking here until I saw my health there. Yeah, we got down real low there. Have to be very careful. We might be wearing our power armor, but these enemies are as tough as they come. It's from the final DLC of the game. They have armaments that, in some cases, are actually better than what we're using. Combine that with the fact that the holo rifle has to reload after 4 shots, and that could have gone way worse, as in that would have been our first death ever since Dead Money. I think we died enough in Dead Money to account for the rest of the run. With all immediate threats dispatched, we'll go ahead and slap on the laser detonator, blow up that warhead. That's a fun GRA challenge to contend with as well. We're gonna backtrack to that camp where we took out the trooper, as well as activated that domicile where the auto dock was, sell, and then go on our merry little way. After entering the collapsed tunnel and having a little chat with our Eddie pal, well, it turns out that this place, is rather foreboding. Hey, if you rush up to this Deathclaw here, it'll actually attack you, but since it's programmed to die, it has 1 hit point, I think, anyway. Either way, instant killing a Deathclaw when you normally wouldn't otherwise is kind of awesome. You know, just by the way. Oh yeah, I forgot about the flashbangs. Might as well add those to our arsenal too. I mean, this run has been strangely vacant of explosives. We haven't even used plasma or pulse, I think. Man, this run has been like, what, 50 hours long already? Yeah, you'll have to pardon me if I forgot. And after seeing that NCR corpse, getting the Bravo team's mission orders, and this little hive of tunnelers, yeah, I think we can safely conclude that our brothers met a similar fate here. But Roz, I hear you say, how did they get past the warheads that we had to blow up? Well, they're not confined to game mechanics like we are, okay? They had to muddle through that without us, you know what I mean? Now, just like with the Markmen, we have to be real careful with these tunnelers here. One-on-one, they're not so bad, but they can swarm you real fast. They can dig underground, thus are invulnerable until they resurface. But you might have noticed that little pop-up when we grab the flashbangs. The flashbangs can potentially set them into a frenzy. Might make use of that a little bit later on. In our second encounter with Ulysses, we're making sense of what the divide is and how it came to be, and yeah, it's pretty clear to us that this Courier 6 guy, yeah, Ulysses has a bit of a grudge with him, and it's pretty clear that he is very dissatisfied with the fact that he could not personally get his revenge and teach Courier 6 a lesson himself. Still, it's rather, wrong, I'll say, to blame Courier 6 for doing their job and delivering a package they were hired to transport. Now, we're about to engage with a group of Markmen. One of them is named Beast, and he has a really awesome weapon. The 10mm shoulder-mounted auto Gatling gun. Yeah, I really just said that, auto Gatling gun. I'm not gonna even edit that out either. Yeah, I said that because it's a fully automatic weapon. Another type of weapon that's kind of absent here on this channel. I'm gonna have to rectify that real soon. Not this run, though. I have no plans to use that weapon. I do plan to sell it, though. It's quite valuable. Now, I know I talked about the atmosphere of the DLCs, and I'm about to beat that dead horse, because, man, Lonesome Road, this part in particular, it's so dreary, man. Ulysses describes this place as a nation taking its first breath, and you can really see that here. It was a place independent of the NCR and the Legion. But taking our break from all of this wonderful dreary scenery, speaking of locals here, more Deathclaws, yeah, that's always fun. This one's not programmed to die in 1 hit, but we one-shot it anyway because good old sneak attacks and a decent energy weapon score. Now, there is a second one over there. We're gonna take that out before we advance. We might be powerful, but going up close-up, mano-a-mano with Deathclaws, even with our 91 melee weapon score, yeah, that's a no thank you on my bingo card. With those threats dispatched, we're going to advance forward and take out this camp of marked men, and coming up is something I thought was pretty frustrating, even for like a main story playthrough here of Lonesome Road. See, we're going to a place called Ashton Silo Controls, right? And I think that Courier 6, no matter what, would understand that pushing a big red button in a place that's known to have nuclear missiles is a pretty bad idea. And we inexplicably cannot open the door until we launch the missile. Like, we can't have Eddie hack the terminal or do it ourselves. No, we have to push the button like a complete idiot. So my workaround for our character's story is that Ulysses actually set it off and we were just too late to stop it. Now, my disliking for being forced to set off a nuclear missile aside, we do unlock a really cool and extremely difficult area called the Courier's Mile, which we're not going to tackle that this DLC. I mean, we're not a courier after all. Ulysses can go there in power level and get some experience points of his own. Well, we're going to lead the divide and come back with another weapon. That's one thing I really like about Lonesome Road, you know. The other 3 you can't leave until you complete it. No, Lonesome Road, you can come and go as you please. And I figure since there's been a distinct lack of plasma weaponry this run, let's go ahead and give that some lovin' too. Well, maybe not right here. I'm thinking the best course of action is to rely on our been trusty this entire run, Brotherhood Gladius to deal with this swarm of tunnelers. I don't know about you guys, but this is one of my favorite parts of this DLC because, like, these ravenous little beasts are just coming at you they're swarming the elevator and you gotta take them out. I mean, that's pretty obvious, but you gotta be very fast with it because they can pile up real quick, and if you're too slow, yeah, you're gonna become tunneler chow. And our buddy Eddie can tank some hits for us because he is essential up to this point in time. You know, it's coming through Lonesome Road where I'm like, you know what, I probably should have taken Strongback as a perk. Very overlooked, at least for me anyway. I don't know about you guys, but for me, I usually look at it, I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll take it. I just never end up taking it. Oh yeah, this run, absolutely I should have. What's that other one called? The one where you need a 70 barter check, a pack mule or something, where you can fast travel if you're over encumbered? Yeah, that would have helped out a lot this run too, but it just goes to show I didn't plan out the build at all. I just picked perks as I went along. In this conversation with Ulysses, we ask him to confirm if he can our suspicion about our brothers being killed by the tunnelers, and he does confirm that for us. Now, we don't know that he activated that missile silo to fire that nuke that we failed to stop. Though I think it's not a question that needs answering, the marked men, though violent and clearly not a group willing to listen to reason, wouldn't have any motive to set off that warhead at Ashton's silo. Still, this guy is impressive, intriguing even. He clearly knows how to navigate and survive the dangers of the Divide. Since he's so open to dialogue and we've learned quite a bit about him already, maybe, just maybe, he is willing to listen to reason. Now, I could have just detonated that warhead down there, but when I was going through this, I was like, you know, I haven't used a plasma weapon in quite a while. What better time than right now than many hours into this challenge to try to get better with my aim with plasma rifles, just test my own conditioning, go the extra mile. Well, yeah, I definitely should have detonated that warhead. This one would be willing, unlike at Ashton's silo. Well, the coast is clear for the time being, so time to help ourselves to some sweet, sweet loot. Been doing a lot of fast travel here. That's another reason why I didn't ban fast travel, because we can't fit the Humvee here in the Divide. Otherwise, that'd be kind of awesome if we could. But it just wasn't to be. The point being, though, that the commissaries seem to restock their cap count pretty quickly, so you go back, they usually have 6,000 caps to barter with, you can sell the plethora of stuff you pick up, and when we've exhausted the commissaries' caps to barter with, we just fast travel back to the entrance to the passage to Canyon Wreckage, leave, find a vendor where you haven't exhausted the caps of yet, and then, hey, we got much more money. And it's right around this point where we find out that this Eddie model in particular actually was active back not only in our home turf, but deep in. Yeah, I like that what's a Chicago question. Yeah, we're gonna just ignore that one. Ain't no way the innovator is asking that question. As we make our way down to deal with the rest of the marked men, one more thing I want to address is that as much as I love this Glock 86 plasma pistol, it's been super fun to use the entire time. I really regret that I wasn't able to get some of the other weapon packs to work with this. There's a lot that come with this mod, and unfortunately I wasn't able to get some of them to work. Like, on screen now is a really cool picture of the Gatling laser that was supposed to come with this mod, and I just couldn't get the, something with the textures conflicting or something. Again, very new to this whole experience. I typically use very basic mods like the Better BoS mod. Great mod, by the way. But, yeah, wasn't able to get everything to work, and I am very sorry about that. If you guys have any tips on how I can fix this, and as well as the texture of the Brotherhood Gladius, which kind of seems to work depending on the lighting, I am always open to taking advice on how to better myself when it comes to modding, or just, you know, content creation in general. But getting back to the action here, yeah, very rusty with this weapon in particular. I tend to prefer laser weapons over plasma due to the fact that they fire a lot faster. Though the plasma weapons are also very awesome, and boy do they deal a lot of damage. That's just one more thing for me to strive to get better at, using this weapon, and like-minded plasma weaponry. What's your guys' favorite energy weapon? Let me know in the comments below. For me, I'm gonna say, as far as New Vegas is concerned, the Hollow Rifle. It has a great aesthetic, the ammo looks awesome. Oh, and that damage over time effect when you hit something, that just kinda seals the deal. But if I can't count DLCs, I'm gonna go with the classic laser rifle. I mean, might be a standard run-of-the-mill weapon, but it's reliable, and I always have a good time using it. We're coming up on another warhead here, and once we destroy that and take out some marked men lurking nearby, Well, there's not too much to talk about until we get to the tunnels of Abaddon. No, not tunnels, a cave of Abaddon. Don't think that we've seen the last of those nasty little tunnelers because, oh, they're about to come back with a vengeance. We'll go ahead and destroy this warhead and make our way to our final showdown with the dreaded tunnelers. Now, it's not just any pack of tunnelers. We're going to be fighting the Queen Bee too. She's badass, man. We have to dispatch of this group of stragglers first, and then what we're going to do is start lobbing flashbang grenades and hope for the best. Now, usually this goes very poorly for me, and I have to just go in guns a-blazing or knives a-swinging, whatever, swinging the old-fashioned way, but I am kind of glad that Eddie is essential for this point in the Lonesome Road plot because, well, if he wasn't, that poor guy would get torn to shreds by these little beasts. I don't remember if these guys are affected by the Purifier perk or not. I mean, we don't have it, but we do have Super Slam, and our melee is pretty darn strong, so I guess that kind of not really makes up for it, but it's good enough, you know, a silver medal. And it's time to start lobbing flashbang grenades and just kind of hoping for the best. This usually doesn't go well for me when I use these things, but this time around, well, I don't know what stroke of luck I was blessed with, but, yeah, completely different from what I'm used to. Another effect of the flashbang is that it drains fatigue, I think just from abominations, but hey, that's good enough for me. We can go in with our trusty Gladius and start swinging. One more thing I want to say about this weapon is that although its durability isn't the best, repairing it is very, very inexpensive. 100 caps if you're at super low condition or if it's broken. Pretty cool. Now, the two-handed one, the Brotherhood Greatsword, that thing costs an arm and a leg. That's kind of why I stopped using it. It was quite cool while it lasted, though. I love the attention to detail on these mods. And because Courier 6 was not here to do it for him, Ulysses takes Eddie from us, and let's take a moment to talk about how our protagonist feels about this guy. He is a bit conflicted, but from what we know about Ulysses, there's some real potential. He just needs a bit of a push in the right direction. Consumed by his disdain for Courier 6 and what happened at the Divide, Ulysses' motivation, even in the main timeline, is that he wants a new beginning. As an ex-legionary, he does refer to his former master by the Latin pronunciation Kaiser, but he doesn't see a future for them because of how obsessed Kaiser is with Hoover Dam and New Vegas. The Legion, to him, is just like the bull. It is sick and dying. But we can show him that there's a way towards a new beginning, one where he could find peace in, one that he can call home. Our character, having a tribal mother, sort of understands where Ulysses is coming from. He lost his tribe, the Twisted Hares, to the Legion, after they were sold sweet lies by Wolpez and Kulta. However, in our territory back in the Midwest, there are plenty of tribes who have been conscripted, and there are many others who are lorded over peacefully. Not only that, but the warrior was a tribal after all. Maybe, just maybe, this Ulysses is a once-in-a-generation survivor. Perhaps our protagonist is feeling what the warrior's companions felt about them decades ago. And if we were willing to bring the think tank aboard as Midwest assets without them being the wiser, because it's the think tank, then I think pursuing a diplomatic option with Ulysses is not entirely unreasonable. And yes, in this version of events, Ulysses is the one who set off Ashton Missile Silo on its irreversible countdown, but Courier 6 is the one in the main timeline who sets that warhead off. Even a very good Karma Courier, though baited by Ulysses, destroys part of the Divide, and from the perspective of Ulysses, repeats history. All the innovator is saying is that it would be a real shame to lose that potential. But still, we gotta get to Ulysses, and this final stretch of the Divide is not making it easy. Deathclaws, Markmen stationed way above the high ground in a way that would make Obi-Wan Kenobi jealous. More warheads and other threats lurking throughout the area. This is for sure our toughest test yet. And if that wasn't bad enough, we've got another type of markmen coming at us, those under the effects of a stealth boy. There are two we have to battle after destroying a warhead blocking the passage to advance forward. They're not any more or less difficult in terms of health, but because they're invisible, they can be a serious pain. The first one is a markman inexplicably named Blade. Maybe he was a fan of the vampire hunter from the pre-war era, though he probably doesn't realize that was a fictitious person and not a real person. Still, it's very kind of him to get caught up on that collision there so we have easy target practice. He does eventually break free of Fallout New Vegas game design, but by the time that happens, it's too little too late. Good night, Irene. Ain't no one sticking around long after a finisher like that, or falling victim to this game's collision. Making our way further deeper into the recesses of the Divide here, we come across a place disconcertingly named the Waste Disposal Station. Wonder if that's still in use. We're ambushed by a couple of marked men, another one under the effects of a stealth boy. Now, this one does not have a name. I guess he wasn't special enough to earn a cool title. But because that guy is rocking a Gatling laser, I figure it's best for us to switch to our Gladius and start swinging until he drops. Now, we are allowed to use a Gatling laser if we want to, but I elect not to. We have one back in our storage, back in our abandoned BoS bunker player home anyway. Typically sells for a lot more than 1.4k caps, so it's probably not in great condition either. Not worth the wait, especially because we don't have Eddie here with us. Well, we've had some bumps along the way, but so far we're looking pretty darn good here. Well, we can go ahead and grab this duffel bag here. I'm sure it's full of some nice old goodies. Or the game can crash. Thanks, New Vegas. Now, pardon me because I didn't quick save. I went back, got a bunch more ammo before taking on the final stretch before Ulysses' Temple here. I was a little bit miffed having to regain all that progress. I didn't bring this up before, and I cut out the crashes from Honest Hearts, but I crashed a lot during the course of the Honest Hearts playthrough. I left that one in because I hadn't saved my progress at all, and whoo boy, those markmen are the perfect targets to take out that frustration on. All said and done, we'll go ahead, enter, free Eddie after taking out some sentry bots, equip our US Army General outfit so that we have the appropriate speech check for Ulysses, and a Meeting People magazine definitely helps too. We'll take care of all that good stuff once we're done talking to Eddie here. Super happy to be reunited with this guy. Having tracked down Ulysses to his eponymous temple, we're gonna pop open our Vault Zero Pit Boy here, slap on a Meeting People magazine. You know, cause a refresher is always nice, right? As we talk with Ulysses, we tell him that we're in support of the NCR, not because of what they are, but because of what they could be. There's more than just the Dam, Vegas, the NCR, and Legion. There's a world further east, one that started from nothing, much like the settlement that would become known as the Divide, and that its territory is worth fighting for, worth preserving. His grudge against Courier 6, the NCR, and even Wolpez and the Legion are keeping him from finding peace, and we can help him. But his way, this way, is not the way towards a new future, because he, like the Courier he detests, is also repeating history. We're able to get through to him, but only just. That's something I love about the dialogue options with Ulysses. You can pass the speech check and still fail to persuade him. It's a real nice throwback to Fallout 1 and trying to convince Richard Gray that his way leads to a dead end. But, well, just having a high speech check isn't gonna give you an auto pass on that. Seeming to have come to his senses, Ulysses aids us in fighting off the marked men. He sees it himself firsthand. This was originally a trap he had sprung for Courier 6, but now one for us because we've been so hot on his trail. He sees the foolishness of his actions, and unfortunately for these already doomed souls, they're no match for the might of a Courier and the Innovator. There are plenty of warheads to detonate here to make progress in the GRA challenge. I didn't bother with completing it this run, but there are plenty of tactical advantages of setting these off. By destroying the warheads and taking out the markmen, we have secured the area, but there is the matter of the missile at hand. It just got 2 more warheads to take out here, and well, as far as that warhead goes, it is set on a trajectory towards the NCR, but we're gonna put a stop to that. Now, we could fire it at the Legion and further weaken them, but this world, let's just say it doesn't need any more nuclear warheads. Try as though we might, there's no way for us to stop this launch, but Eddie finds a way, because, oh, that's chaos. I already made that joke. But yeah, our little pal has to sacrifice himself to stop the launch, and thankfully also sends his data over to our Eddie, so he kind of lives on in spirit. Now, Ulysses has a lot to think about, and of course we want to recruit him into the Midwest, and I think that he would be open to at least trying, but not until the conflict here in the Mojave is settled. And even then, he might say no. That's up to him, and we're not gonna force him. We're just glad we were able to stop all of this. Now, before the final battle, one last thing. Our last order of business before the final battle is to get the followers on our side. Now, they technically already are on our side, but there's a rough patch between them and the NCR that needs some serious mending. With our status within the followers, it shouldn't be too difficult to persuade Julie Farkas to pledge to the NCR's cause in the name of stopping the Legion. She's a bit skeptical at first, but we explained to her that keeping the NCR forces healthy while they're fighting against Caesar's Legion is not just in everyone's best interests, it's what the followers would do. because the people of the Mojave come first, and without the NCR, the Legion has very little in the way of resistance. The most resistance they would face otherwise is our garrison and our Securitron forces, but even that's not enough to stem their tide. Caesar's dead, but the Legion is certainly committed to taking the dam as a tribute to him, most likely. With the followers pledging to help the NCR and us during this final battle, we're feeling pretty darn confident here if I do say so myself. Now, before the final battle, it's imperative that we're in top shape, and we are, though we got a little bit of reds in us, wouldn't hurt to get those purged out. And it's pretty funny because I'm gonna tell you right now that I forgot to repair our Brotherhood Gladius before coming here and going to the final battle, so, yeah, expect us to be a bit compromised. Well, we gotta give the Legion a fighting chance, am I right? Once at Hoover Dam, Colonel Moore directs us to General Oliver. We get to meet him for the first time. The good general seems quite happy to see us, and we are quite happy to assist the NCR in driving the Legion out of the Mojave. Now, as we get ready for battle, that side quest that normally comes up, the one that Mike Lawson gives us to go and power up those generators, those turbines, to turn the Legion into chunky salsa, well, we're gonna say that we have a couple of our best guys here alongside us to take care of that task, while we ourselves make a straight push to the Legates camp. Tall order considering where we are, but after everything we've overcome together, well, there's only one way to go. That way is forward, and, well, ain't nothing gonna stop us now. Don't take that double negative out of context, okay? We let Lawson know that our boys are on the job, and, well, let's get ready. Let's do this. As far as what we brought to Hoover Dam goes, well, what better things to bring than the gear that's gotten us through a lot of this run? Our trusty Gladius, our awesome Glock 86 plasma pistol, and our Gauss rifle. The Gauss rifle, the signature weapon of a Brotherhood Paladin, if our inferior Western counterparts have anything to say about that, might be the one thing they're right about. And as I mentioned before that I forgot to repair our Brotherhood Gladius, yeah, I didn't notice that until we were, well deep into this mission here, and I was like, you know what, I could just reload a save, go do that, but where's the fun in that? Let's add some challenge to this final battle, shall we? And add a challenge we shall. Let's just hope that this cocky hubris of our protagonist doesn't come back to bite us in the butt. Hey, I gotta say, to quote the Oblivion guards, so far, so good. So far, so good. Oh god, I hope we don't glitch out or crash again. Man, we've crashed like 12 times in this run already. Well, we carved through the Legion like they're one collective giant cake. Let's talk about what our companions are doing. Boone's here too, though since he re-enlisted, he's stationed elsewhere at the dam. Cass, Veronica, Lily, Eddie are all defending Grub and Gulp Rest Stop because that place is just a hot spot for Legion hit squads. And since that's consistent with hit squad routing, maybe the Legion feels like they need a W somewhere in their otherwise massively failed campaign. But that's not gonna happen with our femme fatales and Brobot there to help defend that little outpost. Arcade's back in Freeside as per what we directed him to do in lieu of the aftermath of hooking us up with the remnants. Raoul is back at our Midwest garrison, having excelled in repairing the gear of our brothers and sisters in arms. That brings me to another point. Who joined our chapter? Well, I think it goes without saying that Boone did not. We'd extend the offer, naturally. And while he'd appreciate the gesture for what it is, he'd respectfully decline. NCR is his home, but I'm sure that the Innovator will be seeing more of him in the times to come. Cass didn't because she's a caravaner, though I suspect she can revive Cassidy caravans, in lieu of the Crimson Caravan and Vangraphs being exposed in a lawful civil manner. She'll most certainly have our backing. Veronica, as we discussed before, is not part of the Midwest, and I imagine she just wants to leave everything behind after the destruction of the Hidden Valley bunker. That is a tragedy, but, well, they committed an act of aggression against us first, so they had to be dealt with accordingly as per the orders of our elder. But hey, since we know the coordinates to the Sierra Madre and the villa, she can get her happy ending by heading there and reuniting with Christine. Lily is best left at Jacobstown. She does not need to be fighting anymore after all this, and because she's going full speed ahead with the full dose of medication, she can perhaps be the catalyst for a cure for the Nightkin. Eddie is owned by the Midwest, and we can uncover more Enclave secrets with our little buddy in tow. Arcade, as we told him, remains with the followers where his talents are best put to use. That and, frankly, it's in our best interest to not harbor someone associated with the Enclave in any way, shape, or form. As far as our DLC companions go, God, Dog, whatever you want to call him is dead. Dean is answering for his crimes, having been taken into custody by our garrison, and there's a nice little internment camp with his name on it. Christine remains at the villa as its self-appointed warden. Waking Cloud remains in Zion with a new husband from the Dead Horses. That's her ending, if you reveal what Daniel has hidden from her. And as for Follows Chuck, if he's encouraged to leave and explore outside of Zion in the main timeline, he's never heard from again. Well, not this time, mate. Oh no, Follows Chuck comes to join the Midwest. He has the potential to do great things, and it seems like an organic bit of progression where he gets to see more of the world and make his people proud. Ulysses has been watching over the Divide as he does in the main timeline, and is giving some thought about journeying to the Midwest to give that place a chance to find a new place to call home. And hey, who knows? Maybe one day the Midwest will find itself with what our protagonist has come to see, the second coming of the warrior. But that's up to Ulysses to decide. So, recap style here. Raoul has joined the Midwest as a mechanic where he'll gain more skills and perhaps even become an engineer. Follows Chalk as a conscript and initiate. Eddie is our brobot, as usual. And Ulysses, well, that's open to interpretation. To me, that made the most sense for the characters who might actually join. There wouldn't be many, but for the few who do, they have a lot to offer. Getting back to the run here, we tell the snipers, the NCR veteran rangers, to stay back and just cover our advance. No need to throw more lives away. God knows there have been plenty of lives lost here in the Mojave wasteland already. And as Joshua Graham would say, can't expect God to do all the work. And as far as the legionaries are concerned, try as though they may, they are not stopping us. Not here, not now. We've come way too far to be stopped. And I figure that having the companions partake in the final battle in their own way was a good justification for not bringing any of them with us. And I mean, we got the remnants to cover our rear. That's gonna be very interesting to talk about later on. But as the greatest criminal lawyer of Albuquerque would say, you know nothing and deny everything. As far as we know, these Enclave remnants just showed up and started gunning down the Legion. As for why they didn't fire upon the NCR, well, we couldn't say, but maybe, just maybe, they're trying to send a message. I wonder where they got that idea from. As we get ready to have our showdown with the Legate, best that we clean up the Praetorians and the veteran legionaries in the little sniping towers. The first order of business is to take out the Praetorians and the two guards by the entrance there. I think it's very interesting that if you side with House or go independent, they're not there, but if you're helping the NCR, they are there. I don't know about you guys, but I always consider the NCR ending for Hoover Dam to be the most difficult battle of the four. We got no Securitrons to help us out here. And because from a game mechanic standpoint, we eliminated pretty much anyone who could help us in battle, like the Great Khans or the Hidden Valley Brotherhood. Yeah, it's just us. And hey, speaking of just us, it's time for our showdown with Legate Lanius, the successor to Joshua Graham, and hardly the man that our friend is. As is typical in our challenge videos, before we battle the Legate or attempt to reason with him, depending on who we're playing as, we're gonna go ahead and chem up, buff up, all that good stuff in preparation for this confrontation. And I think it's pretty clear that our protagonist is not even going to remotely attempt trying to reason with this guy. Now, surely VATS mode would make this easier, but we haven't used it the entire playthrough. We're not about to start now. We do miss our follow-up shot, unfortunately, but the first shot that we got off leaves Legate Lanius with about half health. Very good. Well, it doesn't matter, though, because we give him the good old 1-2 punch, and just like that, the famous Butcher of the East is already gone. Well, he didn't travel east far enough, apparently. And from there, all we gotta do is clean up the Praetorians, and we are donezo. Well, or so we think anyway, because there is still one veteran legionary just kind of hanging out in those little guard towers there. Now, this guy could totally just tuck tail and run and just live to fight another day, but you gotta admire the balls on the guys in those guard towers. They're willing to fight and die for their cause, and gotta give a little bit of respect where it's due. But it's just him against us and the remnants, so I like to think this guy's chances are, oh, let's just say they're not great. I'll give him credit, though. He's doing his best to try and sneak up on us and try to get an opener, but no dice there. We see him coming down that little walkway there. Take aim, one shot, he is Dunyan Rings. And with that said, we are finally done with this absolute behemoth of a challenge. I really hope you guys enjoyed that run, and kudos to you if you stuck through all the way, because, man, a lot of effort, blood, and sweat went into this video, and I hope I don't blow it on editing and voicing for you guys, because this has been a long time coming, and man, it's been some of the most fun I've had making content here on this channel. Like I said earlier, though, challenges of this magnitude I think I'm gonna just reserve for Midwest runs. So what would that be, like 2 more possible runs? That may change my mind in the future, but for now, I prefer just going through the vanilla game and maybe one DLC if it's all the same to you. And as far as the Mojave Wasteland is concerned, we've got the NCR spearheading the way with their allies, the Followers of the Apocalypse, and the Midwest Garrison here in the Mojave. Oh, and for what it's worth, I didn't mention this before, but we did do the White Glove side quest in favor of Marjorie, naturally. And I really hope that you enjoyed our protagonist here, the Innovator. I just kind of came up with that off the cuff. I was looking at the Inquisitor from Fallout Tactics 2, and I was like, well, maybe I should blend this and a Midwest Paladin together, because the Midwest chapter is very, very different, so why not take some more liberties? I've taken quite a few already. Because, again, there are no characters from Tactics who are still alive at this day and age. It's been many, many years. 84 years. I said 86 at the start of the video. Yeah, I corrected myself with a little text box at the start of the run, but here I am correcting myself now. Well, like, oh gosh, what is that, like 2 hours later? Oh, man. Well, with this colossal task done, we can get back to some more standard runs. Next up on Fallout New Vegas for challenge videos is FNV as an Omerta thug. For Elder Scrolls Oblivion, we finally get to continue our Elder Scrolls Oblivion without magic or magical gear run, as well as our Let's Play. Looking forward to episode 20 of that. Thank you guys so much for watching once again, and I'll catch you at the next video. Later.